Imagine waking up in Victorian London. The fog hangs low, heavy with the stench of coal smoke and horse manure, but inside your parlour the danger is far quieter. A tiny blue vial rests on the table, laudanum, the doctor's cure for nerves, sleeplessness, or even the grief that clings to widows. You lift it to your lips as so many women do, with no thought of consequence. The taste is bitter, but the relief spreads warm and fast. What no one tells you is that this comfort will not let go. Night by night, drop by drop, London's women are binding themselves to chains softer than silk but stronger than iron. If drifting through the opium-laced fog of Victorian London pulls you deeper into the past, subscribe and share which hidden corners of history you'd like me to explore next. We're stepping back into the time of Victorian women, when respectability was everything, and yet whole households hid a secret haze of opium bottles in their cabinets. Today, you can walk into a pharmacy for safe painkillers or sleep aids, but in London of the 1800s, your grandmother might have been handed liquid addiction in a glass bottle with a doctor's blessing. You wake in a room heavy with silence. The curtains are drawn tight against the pale grey of a London morning, but still the damp finds its way inside. Coal soot clings to the glass, smearing the light until everything appears blurred, as though the world itself has been dipped in smoke. The fire has long since gone out. The grate is cold, the ash grey and lifeless, and the air is thick with that strange smell, a mixture of damp wood, old lace, and the faint sweetness of medicine that seems to never leave the house anymore. On the table beside your bed rests a small vial. It is no larger than your thumb, made of amber glass, the cork sealed with a thin wax band. When you tilt it, the liquid inside clings heavy and slow, darker than tea, red-brown like iron rusted in water. The label, once crisp and neat, has begun to curl at the edges from use. Tincture of Opium, Laudanum. A respectable word, a doctor's word, not a word meant to frighten, though it should. Your hand trembles as you reach for it. The chill of the glass bites at your skin, but the comfort it promises makes your breath quicken. You measure out the drops as carefully as a priest pouring communion wine 1, 2, 3 into the porcelain spoon. The bitter smell rises sharp, almost chemical, but then it passes, leaving only the knowledge that soon, very soon, your aches will fade, your mind will loosen, and the day will become easier to survive. The first swallow is always the hardest. The taste burns, bitter and cloying all at once, as though you have taken in ink and earth together. It coats your throat, clings to your tongue, and for a moment you gag, but then the warmth begins. It spreads low in your chest, a slow unfurling like embers being coaxed back to life. Your stomach knots, then eases. The restless shiver in your limbs softens. A sigh escapes before you even know it is yours. Outside, the city stirs. The rattle of carriage wheels against cobblestones, the shouts of boys hawking papers, the cry of a milk cart all faint and far away. You should rise, dress, and begin the day. There are letters to write, sewing to mend, perhaps a visit to make. But the weight of your body against the mattress feels too sweet to disturb. The laudanum holds you like a mother's hand on a fevered brow, soft and unyielding. You sink deeper into it, letting the minutes slide by unnoticed. No one speaks of the vial as a danger. Your physician placed it in your hand with solemn authority, promising it would soothe sleepless nights, steady frazzled nerves, and chase away the headaches that come too often. And truly, it does. For a time it is everything he said it would be. It is escape from the iron grip of sorrow, from the gnawing teeth of grief, from the endless grey of London's damp winters. But beneath that warmth hides another truth. The drops you take today will not be enough tomorrow. Already, the spoon feels lighter than it once did. Already, you think of the next swallow even as this one still works its way through your veins. And so begins the quiet chain links invisible, forged not of iron but of habit, of relief, of the soft whisper that says, just one more, just once more. The room remains still, but within you the first bond has been set. The bitter drop has done its work. The rain has been falling since dawn. Outside, London's cobblestones glisten slick and dark, puddles pooling in the dips where wheels have worn deep grooves. Carriages splash through the streets, their iron-shod wheels clattering, their horses steaming in the cold drizzle. You pull the shawl tighter across your shoulders, watching droplets creep down the glass. The damp gnaws at your bones, and every cough rattles louder than the ticking of the clock on the mantel. In the stillness of the parlour, you hear the faint clink of glass as your hand grazes the little vial once more. The doctor left it only a week ago. He arrived in his fine coat, hat dripping rainwater, his leather bag worn but trustworthy in appearance. He smelled faintly of tobacco and soap, spoke softly, and carried himself with an air of authority that left no room for question. His prescription was written with practiced ease, the ink curling into loops as though he had written the same words hundreds of times before. For sleeplessness, for nerves, for female ailments, he said. Take as needed. Laudanum is perfectly safe, perfectly respectable, and you believed him, as everyone did. The bottle came from the apothecary in a neat paper wrap, the label tidy and official. There was no whisper of scandal in possessing it. Quite the opposite, it was proper, civilized, modern medicine. Gentlewomen kept it in their cabinets, tucked beside lavender water and smelling salts. Mothers carried it in handbags. Even clergymen's wives kept it by the bedside, the label serving almost like a shield of approval. Tincture of Opium. Nothing dangerous, nothing disreputable. When you sip the dark liquid, you do not imagine yourself as reckless. You are not one of those poor souls slumped in gin shops, their lives drowned in cheap spirits. No, your medicine comes in a clean bottle, given by a doctor with kind eyes. You tell yourself it is different. You tell yourself you are respectable. The neighbours speak of it openly, though always in hushed tones behind lace curtains. Lady Wentworth swears it cured her headaches, missus. Harker admits it calms her nerves when her husband returns home loud and impatient. Young mothers confess they cannot bear the endless crying of infants without it, and the drops they slip onto tiny tongues bring blessed silence. No one calls it addiction, no one uses words of warning. Instead, they speak of it the way they might speak of tea or sugar, another comfort of the modern world, a sign that medicine has marched forward from the brutal remedies of the past. And yet, even as the laudanum soothes, something inside you knows the headaches return sooner now. The sleepless nights gnaw deeper unless you take the spoon more quickly, unless you tilt the vial with less hesitation. The relief you once measured in drops is now measured in larger spoons. But how can it be wrong when it is written in the doctor's hand, when the apothecary shelves it beside cough syrups and tonics, when society itself accepts it as no more scandalous than a dose of castor oil? The rain outside thickens, the sound of it steady as a drumbeat. You close your eyes, letting the warmth of the medicine spread through your body, convincing yourself it is only treatment, not temptation. Respectable, the doctor said, respectable medicine for respectable women, and so you cling to the word as the room softens around you, as the edges of the day blur into a haze of drowsy calm. The bottle sits quietly on the table, glowing in the dim lamplight like a jewel, promising another night's relief, another day made bearable. Respectable medicine, so easy to believe, so easy to trust, and so very hard to put down. The lamps outside are lit early, their glow seeping weakly through the fog that clings to the street. From behind lace curtains, you watch figures move past, blurred shadows with umbrellas held low against the drizzle. The glass is damp with condensation, and when you draw a finger across it, a thin line clears, giving you a narrow glimpse of London's restless heart. But here, inside, the parlour is hushed, and the air is thick with the scent of coal smoke, damp velvet, and the faint, unmistakable sweetness of laudanum. The curtains themselves are delicate, embroidered by careful hands long ago, but they hide more than they reveal. Behind them, women sit with faces pale and drawn, their voices low, their movements deliberate. They speak politely, their words measured, their laughter soft, but their eyes give them away glazed, heavy, slow to focus. In their hands, teacups tremble ever so slightly, not from the chill, but from the tiny glass bottles tucked in their handbags, bottles whose corks bear the faintest stain of red-brown liquid. Respectability is everything here. The chairs are arranged neatly around the hearth, silver spoons rest beside porcelain cups, and on the mantel, family portraits look down with stern approval. Appearances must be preserved at all costs, and yet, beneath the lace and polish there are shadows. Every smile is strained, every gesture rehearsed, each woman silently calculating how long until she can slip away to her cabinet, her pocket, her little vial waiting to restore her composure. When the host pours tea, you watch as a guest stirs her cup longer than necessary, her hand dipping beneath the table, her movements shielded by the drape of her skirts. The clink of glass against china is barely audible, disguised by polite conversation. She lifts the cup to her lips, sips deeply, and exhales as though merely savoring the warmth. But you see it, the flicker in her eyes, the slackening of her jaw, the relief flooding her body. She speaks with more ease now, laughs more freely, as though the bitterness she swallowed moments ago has smoothed every edge of her being. This is the rhythm of polite society, lace curtains drawn tight against the world, conversation flowing as tea is poured, and beneath it all, the quiet presence of opium tincture, invisible but everywhere. These rooms are sanctuaries and prisons both. Here, the world believes women are safe, respectable, untouched by the ruin that plagues the poor in gin shops and back alleys. But behind the curtains, the shadows deepen. When the evening ends, guests step back into the London night, their carriages waiting at the curb. They smile, exchange farewells, their voices steady. But you see the truth in the way they clutch their bags, the way they lean heavily against the seats as the wheels rattle away. Behind every respectable face lies the same dependence, hidden but growing, carried home through fog and drizzle. The curtains fall back into stillness, veiling the parlour once more. From the street, nothing seems amiss. Lace glows soft in lamplight, and shadows move faintly within. But inside, the bottles remain, lined neatly beside perfumes and powders, waiting to be reached for again. London keeps its secrets well, especially those whispered behind lace curtains. The bell above the apothecary's door jingles faintly as you step inside, leaving the cold drizzle of London behind. The air within is warmer, close with the mingled smells of camphor, peppermint, and drying herbs. Wooden shelves rise high on either side, lined with glass jars that catch the lamplight, glowing amber, green, and gold. Each jar seems to shimmer with promise relief for the body, comfort for the mind, cure for every ill that gnaws at the spirit. The floorboards creak underfoot, the sound swallowed by the steady drip of rain outside. The counter is polished, smooth by years of coin and conversation. Behind it stands the apothecary, his waistcoat neat, his spectacles perched low on his nose. He greets you with practiced solemnity, his tone equal parts compassion and authority. He knows why you are here. They always know. He asks only the barest questions, sleeping troubles, nervous tension, perhaps headaches, or the faint spells that come without warning. He nods at your answers, as though each word confirms what he has already decided, that you, like so many others, require relief. He turns to the shelves, and the glow intensifies as the lamplight filters through rows of vials. Your eyes follow his hand as it hovers, then lands upon a small bottle of amber glass. He lifts it with care, as though it contains something sacred. The label is precise, inked in fine lettering, Laudanum, Tincture of Opium. He places it on the counter, the liquid inside thick and slow, clinging to the glass as it tilts. It gleams under the light, more jewel than medicine, a treasure promising comfort to those who can afford its price. Coins exchange hands, the clink echoing faintly in the hush of the shop. He wraps the bottle in crisp brown paper, ties it with string, and slides it toward you. His instructions are calm and measured, only a few drops, as needed, nothing more. You nod, though already your mind whispers that you will return sooner than expected. Already, the glow of the apothecary's shelves has fixed itself in your memory, a beacon calling you back whenever the night grows long or the pain grows sharp. Around you, other customers wait in silence. A mother hushes a crying child while glancing nervously at the shelves. A man coughs into his handkerchief, his skin grey and hollow, his eyes fixed on the rows of bottles as though salvation is only moments away. Each person carries the same hunger, though they clothe it in respectability. No one speaks of vice here, only of medicine, cure, and relief. When you step back into the street, the fog swallows you whole, but the little parcel in your pocket feels heavy, reassuring. The rain taps steadily on the cobblestones, the horses' hooves clatter past, and still you think of the shop's warm glow, of shelves lined with liquid promises. At home, you will untie the string, peel back the paper, and hold the bottle up to the lamp. It will gleam just as it did on the apothecary's shelf, amber, rich, inviting. The glow of that shop lingers with you, not just in memory, but in the vial you now cradle in your hand. A glow that is comfort, a glow that is danger. Though you dare not yet name it, the nursery is quiet at last, too quiet. The air is heavy with the scent of milk gone sour, damp linen, and the faint, sweet, bitter trace of medicine. A single lamp burns low, casting a thin circle of gold across the wooden floorboards, but the corners remain dark. The cradle rocks gently, not by hand, but from the last restless movement of the infant within. You stand close, listening, your ears straining for the wail that has haunted the house for nights unbroken. But now, only silence. On the small table beside the cradle sits the bottle. Its amber glass catches the lamplight, glowing like honey in shadow. The cork bears a faint stain, where earlier you measured a spoonful, tipped it to tiny lips, and prayed for mercy, for rest, for stillness, for a moment's reprieve from the endless crying that shredded nerves and sanity alike. Doctors call it Godfrey's cordial, or mother's friend, or simply laudanum. By any name, it is a tincture of opium, offered as kindly as sugar, as commonplace as tea. The child's eyelids flutter, then fall shut. The small chest rises and falls with slower rhythm now, breaths deep and heavy, as though sleep itself has grown thick around the tiny body. You watch, torn between relief and unease, because the quiet feels unnatural, the hush too complete. Only hours ago you rocked until your arms ached, paced until your legs throbbed, sang until your throat was raw. Nothing stilled the cries until the dropper touched the baby's tongue. In London, you know you are not alone. Countless mothers reach for the vial when nights stretch endless, when hunger never abates, when exhaustion bends the spine and blurs the mind. The poor in crowded tenements pour it freely, soothing infants so they might work another shift, hands in factories or laundry tubs. The wealthy slip it into silver spoons, their nurseries filled with soft blankets and carved cradles, yet the need is the same. Quiet, blessed quiet. You tell yourself it is harmless medicine prescribed, medicine sold openly, medicine every neighbor whispers about with weary nods of understanding, yet deep down, unease creeps in. You have seen infants pale and thin, their cries weakening not with age but with the steady rhythm of doses. You have heard of little ones who did not wake, whose silence was eternal, explained away as frailty, as fate. The truth is rarely spoken, yet it lingers in every household where a small bottle rests beside the cradle. The lamp flickers, and the shadows stretch longer across the room. You place a hand on the edge of the cradle, rocking it gently, the silence pressing in. Outside, the city groans, carriages rattle over cobblestones, voices echo through the fog. But in here, the world has stilled. The bottle gleams faintly in the lamplight, waiting for the next night, the next desperate hour. You whisper a lullaby into the dark, though the child cannot hear it now. The melody trembles, broken by guilt and exhaustion. As you turn away, your eyes drift once more to the vial. Small, ordinary, respectable medicine. Yet in its glow, you feel the weight of a darker truth. that London's quietest nurseries are hushed, not by peace, but by laudanum at the cradle. The clock has long struck midnight, but the hours refuse to move. Shadows pool in the corners of the room, stretching tall and strange across the walls with every flicker of the dying lamp. The coals in the grate glow faintly, their heat all but gone, leaving the air damp and chilled. You lie awake in the heavy dark, eyes fixed on the ceiling where patterns of cracked plaster seem to shift and swim. Sleep will not come. It has not come for days, perhaps weeks. The nights blur into one another, endless vigils of breath and thought, heart racing though the body is weary. Beside the bed, the bottle waits. Its amber shape glimmers faintly in the low light, a sentinel in the silence. You reach for it not out of choice but of necessity, your hand moving with the resignation of one who knows no other remedy. The cork squeaks softly as you pull it free. You measure the drops, each one falling like a clock tick into the porcelain spoon. The smell rises, bitter, acrid, and yet inviting. You swallow, grimacing at the sharp taste, and wait for the slow tide to rise. At first it feels like nothing. The mind still races, the pulse still pounds. The night presses in, suffocating, but then a warmth begins at the edges. Your limbs grow heavy, the bed softens beneath you, and the thoughts that once clawed and tore begin to drift, loosen, scatter. It is not sleep exactly, not the clean rest of childhood, not the peaceful surrender of the weary, but a half-dream, a dimming of the edges of the world. Images come, strange and distorted, a river winding through fog, its waters black and endless, a voice calling faintly from a distance, though no words can be made out. Faces appear familiar yet blurred, their eyes deep hollows, their mouths moving without sound. You reach for them, but your hands pass through like smoke. The visions dissolve, only to return again, looping endlessly until you no longer know if your eyes are closed or open. This is what laudanum gives, not rest, but escape. A counterfeit night, stitched together from fragments of dream and waking. Hours pass unnoticed, but not truly slept. And when morning comes, the exhaustion remains, heavier than before. The body craves more. The mind demands another spoonful, promising that next time the rest will be deeper, the visions gentler. Yet the promise is always broken. You are not alone in this cycle. Across London, behind curtains and shutters, women lie as you do, their bedsides lined with bottles. They rise each day paler, weaker, the nights having given them nothing but haze. Conversations in parlours turn to whispers of sleeplessness, each woman nodding knowingly, each concealing the vial she keeps close. No one dares admit that the cure itself deepens the illness, that laudanum stretches nights into eternity rather than ending them. The clock chimes again, though you cannot tell if it is 2 or 3. The lamp sputters and dies, plunging the room into full darkness. You lie still, heart slowed, mind caught in the fog of the drug. Outside, the city sleeps, but you drift in a twilight, neither waking nor dreaming. It is night without end, and the bottle at your side ensures it will return again tomorrow. The house is hushed, its long corridors draped in shadow. Beyond the nursery door, children's breathing rises and falls in gentle rhythm, their dreams safe beneath quilts tucked tight. You stand watch, as you always do, the silent guardian of their world. By day, you are the governess, the one who drills them in recitation, corrects their posture, guides their pen across lined paper. By night, you are something else entirely, a weary figure with a secret too heavy to share. The fire in your chamber has dwindled to embers, the faint glow casting just enough light to outline the small table by your bed. On it rests a book of Latin lessons, a candle burned low, and a single bottle wrapped in paper that you keep carefully folded so no curious eye may notice. Its cork has been loosened and tightened many times, the glass smudged by trembling fingers. Within swirls the familiar, bitter comfort laudanum, the governess's unspoken ally. Your days stretch long. The children rise early, their demands constant, their lessons endless. You are both teacher and servant. bound by duty yet never belonging fully to the family whose house you occupy. At the table you eat in silence, neither guest nor equal. The hours wear on with needlework and supervision, correcting sums, smoothing quarrels, steadying tempers. Outwardly, you are composed, stern when required, gentle when needed. Inwardly, you are frayed. When the headaches come sharp, pulsing aches born of exhaustion, you know where to turn. When nerves tremble from the pressure of keeping perfect order, you know where to turn. Each night, when the house grows still and the loneliness presses in like a physical weight, you reach for the little bottle. A spoonful steadies the hands, another soothes the restless thoughts. Soon, you are calm enough to face another dawn. But secrecy rules your life. The vial must be hidden beneath handkerchiefs, slipped into the pocket of your gown, tucked away before small eyes can wander or curious questions arise. You move with careful precision, ensuring the children never glimpse what you hold, never taste the bitter drop that keeps you standing. Respectability is your armor, discovery would be ruin. What parent would entrust their children to a governess known to rely on opium's embrace? The silence of your chamber is deceptive. You are not alone in this habit. Other governesses whisper it when they meet in parks, their charge is at play. In half-joking tones they call it the companion, laughing softly, though their laughter carries unease. Each one bears the same weary eyes, the same taut smiles that crack at the edges. They too guard their secret fiercely, for without it, they fear they would collapse under the endless weight of duty. Tonight, as you measure the drops, you pause. Your reflection in the dark window meets your gaze, a pale figure framed by lamplight. The bottle glows faintly in your hand, a reminder of both survival and surrender. You sip quickly, wincing at the bitterness, waiting for the familiar warmth to spread. Relief comes, as it always does, but so does the guilt, creeping in like the fog that curls around the city's rooftops. In the morning you will rise with steady hands and calm voice, the perfect governess once more. The children will never know. The family will never suspect. Only you and the little vial will keep the secret, whispering together in the silence of your narrow room. The house is too large now. Its staircases echo with every step. Its rooms lie cold and unused, and the silence that fills them is heavier than any curtain. Once, the halls rang with laughter, with the tread of a husband's boots, with the soft murmur of shared conversation at the hearth. Now there is only you and the stillness. Widowhood has left you with black gowns, folded letters, and memories that refuse to fade. On the small table beside the armchair rests the only presence that eases the emptiness. A bottle of laudanum, its amber glow soft in the lamplight, waits like an old friend. At first it was prescribed in kindness, the doctor offering it for grief's sharp edge, for sleepless nights when tears soaked the pillow until dawn. He placed it in your hand with solemn assurance. This will help. And it did. With every bitter swallow, the jagged pain dulled, the nights softened, and the tears slowed. Evenings stretch long in the widow's house. You light a single lamp, draw the curtains against the street, and sit by the fire with only the tick of the clock for company. The bottle rests near, its shadow lengthening as the flame flickers. You reach for it not with shame but with gratitude, as though it is a companion who understands your loneliness. A few drops, and the hollow ache inside your chest eases. The silence becomes bearable. The memories blur just enough to let you breathe. Neighbors call, their voices full of sympathy, their hands lingering on yours. They speak of strength, of faith, of moving forward with dignity. Yet when the door closes and their carriages rattle away, you are alone again, the house yawning open around you. They do not see the nights that stretch without end, the weight of grief pressing until your lungs can barely draw breath. They do not know that survival now depends on the small vial waiting at your side. Laudanum becomes ritual. The cork twists free with a soft pop. The liquid pools into the spoon, dark and bitter. You swallow, grimacing at the taste, but already anticipating the warmth that follows. It is not joy it brings, joy is gone. buried with the man you loved, but it is quiet, it is stillness, it is the absence of pain, and that is enough. Other widows whisper the same secret. At church, beneath black veils, they speak softly of sleepless nights, of bottles kept in bedside drawers. Some call it a blessing, others a crutch, but all of them know its hold. Respectable women, draped in mourning, each carrying a hidden companion in her reticule or cabinet. Society nods, for it is understood that grief needs its balm. No one questions the bottle, no one dares suggest it is anything but medicine. Tonight, the fire burns low, the house quiet as the graveyard outside. You lift the spoon once more, feeling the familiar warmth spread through your chest, carrying you away from the sharpness of memory into a softer haze. The chair cradles you, the shadows draw close, and for a little while the loneliness loosens its grip. The widow's companion does not heal, does not replace, but it soothes. And in a world of silence, that is enough to keep you here until morning. London glitters at dusk, gas lamps flickering to life along the boulevards, carriages rolling toward theatres, ballrooms, and parlours filled with music. From the street, everything appears orderly, respectable, and grand. Ladies step out in silks, gentlemen in polished boots, the hum of conversation rising like a gentle tide. Behind the glow of chandeliers and the soft rustle of gowns, society congratulates itself on its refinement, its moral uprightness, its progress. Yet beneath this polished surface, a quieter truth hides one that most prefer not to see. Opium seeps everywhere, yet no one names it. In parlours, ladies sip tea laced with drops of laudanum, their smiles faint but serene. At dinner parties, bottles rest in handbags beside fans and gloves, hidden yet near at hand. Even in the theatre's gilded boxes, you can spot the telltale glass vial tucked discreetly away, waiting for intermission. No one speaks of it openly. To acknowledge its presence would mean acknowledging dependence, and that would disturb the fragile fabric of respectability. Doctors, apothecaries, even clergymen know. They see the trembling hands, the hollowed cheeks, the heavy-lidded eyes. But they say nothing, for to speak would be to accuse, and to accuse would be to scandalize, and scandal is more feared than ruin. Better to look away, to nod politely, to pretend that the medicine bottle resting on every mantel is no different than a jar of lavender water or a pot of jam. In drawing rooms, conversations skirt the truth. Women whisper of restless nights or nerves that will not calm, never daring to admit the source of their relief. Men joke lightly about their wives' remedies, but their laughter is uneasy, edged with something unspoken. Servants, who see more than they should, remain silent. They dust the bottles, wash the spoons, and keep their eyes lowered. To speak would risk their place. To remain silent ensures survival. Society prides itself on morality. Temperance societies rail against gin shops, pamphlets warn of drunkenness among the poor. Respectable women pass by those taverns with disdain, their heads held high. Yet in their own cabinets, hidden behind lace and polished wood, lies a more insidious companion. Gin stumbles in the street, loud and visible. Laudanum whispers behind curtains, invisible and silent. And so, society condemns the one while ignoring the other. Even the papers treat it gently. Advertisements for tonics fill their columns, promising relief for ladies of refinement or mothers in need of rest. Reports of addiction are rare, softened with euphemism, cloaked in vague warnings that never mention names. The epidemic grows in silence, because silence protects reputations, and reputations matter more than truth. You sit in such a parlour now, the lace curtains drawn tight against the fog outside. The laughter around you is polite, the music from the pianoforte delicate, but beneath it all lingers the faint sweetness of laudanum, like a perfume no one acknowledges. Respectability is preserved, and that preservation comes at a cost. Society's blind eye ensures that nothing changes, that the bottles remain uncensored, that the silence deepens. And so the epidemic spreads not in the gutters, not in the taverns, but in the very heart of London's finest homes, where no one dares to look too closely. The marketplace hums with life. Stalls crowd the cobblestones, their awnings dripping with the morning's mist. Vendors shout above the din, calling out prices for fish still slick with river water, for baskets of apples polished bright, for ribbons and pins that catch the weak winter Sunday. The air is thick with smells: coal smoke, roasting chestnuts, damp wool, and something sharper, the acrid tang of chemicals wafting from the apothecary carts scattered between the butchers and bakers. Here, medicine is sold as easily as bread. Bottles of every shape and size gleam in the lamplight, their labels bold and promising: cordial of calm, soothing syrup, elixir of rest. The words are grand, printed in looping fonts on paper labels edged in gold ink, designed to inspire trust in weary eyes. The glass shines amber, crimson, even pale green, catching the gaze of passers-by like jewels laid out for sale. Mothers pause with infants on their hips, their faces lined with fatigue. For a few pennies, they can buy a bottle said to quiet a child's cries, to bring peace to restless nights. Laborers with stooped shoulders and coughing chests hand over coins for tonics that promise strength and vigor. And ladies, their veils drawn low, move quickly through the crowd, purchasing remedies discreetly, tucking them into handbags before anyone can notice. The market cures all, or so it claims. You approach a stall draped in scarlet cloth. The vendor, a man with a booming voice and quick smile, holds up a small bottle to the crowd. He speaks of miracles: headaches banished, nerves soothed, lungs cleared. He demonstrates with a flourish, pouring a drop onto his tongue, smacking his lips with theatrical satisfaction. The crowd chuckles, reassured by his performance. Coins clink into his hand. He does not say the word opium, though it rests at the heart of every promise. The poor buy the cheapest bottles diluted, often mixed with treacle or alcohol, bitter still but affordable. The wealthy pay more for prettier labels and finer glass, though the contents are nearly the same. No warning accompanies the sale, no mention of the dangers hidden inside. To the vendor, it is no more than commerce. To the buyer, it is survival. Children dart between stalls, their pockets heavy with errands, sent by mothers to fetch the syrup that will bring a few hours of silence to crowded rooms. They carry the bottles carefully, their small hands wrapped tight around the glass, unaware of the weight of what they hold. The market has made opium as common as flour, as ordinary as soap. Respectable women and weary men alike depend on its cure. By afternoon, the fog thickens, and the marketplace begins to empty. Vendors pack their cloths, gather their coins, and wheel away carts heavy with unsold bottles. You linger, the vial you purchased pressing warm against your palm through the fabric of your pocket. Around you, the echoes of the crowd fade, leaving only the distant clip of hooves and the hiss of the river beyond. The cure you carry is both promise and peril. It came not from a physician's solemn hand, but from a stall in the open air, exchanged as casually as a loaf of bread. The marketplace cure is everywhere, its glow slipping into every household, its grip tightening with every swallow. London bustles on, blind to the cost. The studio smells of turpentine and damp canvas. Dust motes float in the cold light that falls through tall, grimy windows, illuminating a space crowded with easels, brushes, and half-finished works. On the floor lie crumpled sketches, discarded attempts at inspiration, their lines dark and frantic. In the corner, among jars of pigment and palettes stained with dried color, rests a bottle, small, amber, familiar. Its glow seems almost intentional, as if the artist had placed it there as part of the composition. You watch as he paces the room, his hands stained with paint, his hair falling loose across his brow. His eyes are restless, darting from canvas to canvas, seeking an image that will not come. The city outside offers no peace. Its clamor, its soot, its endless grey skies weigh heavily upon him. Inspiration flickers like a candle guttering in the draught, threatening to vanish at any moment. And so, he turns to the bottle. The cork is pulled, the spoon filled, the liquid swallowed in one practiced motion. He grimaces at the bitterness, but already his body leans toward the warmth it brings. His movements slow, then sharpen. His brush steadies. He bends over the canvas, and suddenly the strokes flow, deliberate, confident. What was once frustration now becomes vision. Shadows deepen, colors pulse with strange intensity, faces emerge from the blur of paint as though drawn out by unseen hands. In these moments, Laudanum feels like Muse itself whispering ideas, softening the edges of doubt, silencing the inner critic that gnaws at him. He paints through the night, oblivious to the chill that creeps across the floor, oblivious to hunger or exhaustion. The drug carries him past weariness, past despair, into a world of heightened dream where every stroke feels inevitable. Yet, when morning comes, the cost is clear. His eyes are hollow, ringed with shadows. His body trembles as he sets down the brush, suddenly aware of his weakness. The canvas glows with strange life, but he hardly remembers painting it. What seemed like genius in the haze now feels uncertain, even grotesque. The figures distorted, the colors too vivid, too unreal. He slumps into a chair, his chest heavy, his breath uneven, the bottle glinting accusingly on the table beside him. You are not alone in this room. Across London, other artists, poets, and musicians lean on the same false muse. Their works fill galleries and pages, celebrated for their strangeness, their intensity, their dreamlike visions. Yet whispers follow them about their pale faces, their nervous fits, their sudden declines. Laudanum grants them fire, but it burns too quickly, leaving ash in its wake. As the day brightens, the artist draws the curtains against the sun, unwilling to face it. He pours another measure, his hands steady only once the warmth begins its slow unfurling. The canvas waits, the muse calls again, and he cannot resist. The brush lifts, the bottle lowers, and the cycle begins anew. In the end, the paintings will outlive him, their colors preserved, their visions admired. Viewers will marvel at the genius, never knowing the quiet bottle that stood in the corner of the room, the silent muse that guided every trembling stroke. The narrow alleyways echo with the cries of children, sharp above the rattle of carts and the hiss of coal smoke. London teems with them, ragged, barefoot, their laughter quick, their tears quicker. Yet behind closed doors, in rooms where the fog seeps through cracked panes and the fire burns too low, many of these cries fall silent too soon. The silence does not come from comfort, nor from sleep earned through play, but from the drop of a liquid darker than night. You step into a tenement room, its walls damp with mildew, its air thick with the smell of unwashed linen and boiled cabbage. A mother bends over a cradle, her face pale and drawn from long hours at the factory. Her hands tremble as she lifts a small spoon, careful not to spill its bitter contents. The baby wails, thin and piercing, until the liquid touches its lips. The cries falter, weaken, fade. Soon the child lies motionless, eyes closed, chest rising in slow, heavy rhythm. The mother exhales in relief, slumping into a chair. For a few hours she will have peace enough to sleep before the dawn whistle calls her back to work. It is not only the poor who rely on the drop. In respectable parlours, too, children are dosed, though the bottles may come from finer apothecaries, their labels printed with gold letters. A governess with weary eyes measures a spoonful for a restless boy, whispering that it will help him sleep. In nursery after nursery, infants taste opium before they taste solid food. Some grow accustomed, their small bodies shaped by it from the start. They are the children of the drop raised in silence, lulled not by lullabies, but by laudanum's heavy embrace. Neighbors whisper of infants who never wake. The papers print occasional warnings, buried in the back pages, of children gone too soon, their deaths recorded as failure to thrive, or consumption, or simply weakness of constitution. Rarely is the bottle mentioned. To name it would mean to accuse, and to accuse would be to admit that medicine itself, the trusted companion of mother and child, is the culprit. so the truth remains in silence, hidden behind drawn curtains. Some of these children grow older, carrying the habit with them. A cough, a spoonful. Sleeplessness, a spoonful. By adolescence, they know no life without it. Their nerves tremble without the familiar burn on the tongue. Their bodies demand what they were given since birth. They are not addicts by choice, but by inheritance. Their mothers never intended to bind them to the same chains, yet the chains close all the same, passed quietly from one generation to the next. In the streets, you see them, children pale beyond their years, eyes glazed, movements sluggish. They lean against door frames, their games short-lived, their laughter thin. To passers-by, they appear sickly, fragile, victims of poverty or ill health. Few realize they are victims of medicine itself, victims of a cure that was meant to comfort, yet steals vitality in silence. The city continues on, its carriages rolling, its factories thundering, its parlors glowing with lamplight, and within it, countless cradles rock gently, each watched over by a bottle. London's next generation grows in the shadow of the drop, lulled to sleep by a cure that promises peace yet sows only weakness. The children of the drop inherit more than silence, they inherit the epidemic itself. The factory bell tolls before dawn, a heavy clang that shakes the narrow streets awake. Men and women shuffle into the fog, boots striking the cobblestones, shoulders hunched against the cold. Their faces are grey, their bodies stooped, worn down by years of labour at looms, in mills, at the furnaces where heat scorches skin and smoke fills lungs. Among them walk the women, mothers, daughters, widows, each carrying more than fatigue in their steps. In their pockets, tucked away in cloth, rests the bottle that helps them endure. The working poor cannot afford leisure, nor the long visits to doctors that wealth provides. Instead, they buy what the marketplace offers, cheap vials, often diluted, sometimes dangerous mixtures labeled as soothing drops or tonics. For a few pennies, the apothecary's stall or corner shop sells relief. Relief for aching backs, for pounding heads, for nerves frayed by endless shifts. The taste is bitter, the afterburn sharp, but the warmth that follows softens the hardness of their days. Inside the mill, the air is thick with dust, the clatter of machines so loud it rattles the chest. Women feed fabric into iron jaws, fingers raw and bleeding. They cough until their throats ache, eyes watering from the particles that never settle. To make it through the hours, they swallow laudanum drops before work, dulling the pain enough to keep their hands moving. The drug steadies them, numbs them, allows them to ignore hunger and fatigue until the bell rings again. When the shifts end, they return to rooms that are scarcely warmer. Fires burn low, food is scarce, children cry from hunger or illness. Here too the vial appears. A spoonful quiets a wailing child so a mother can rest her body, knowing another day of toil waits. Another spoonful calms her own racing heart, still pounding with the echo of machines. The medicine becomes a thread woven into daily life, as necessary as bread or coal. Yet the cost is clear. Many women grow thin, their skin sallow, their hands trembling more with each passing year. Without the drops, their bodies rebel, sweats, shivers, restlessness that makes sleep impossible. With the drops, they survive, but only half alive, dulled by the haze. Their children learn early to fetch the vial from the shelf, to hold it steady while their mothers measure a spoonful. Some even taste it themselves, offered by weary hands desperate for silence. Society sees the working poor as weak, their dependence mocked by those who pretend refinement. But the truth is harsher. Opium is the only rest the poor can afford. Gin shames them in public, but laudanum silences them in private, a cure hidden in plain sight. Respectable households speak of nerves and remedies. In the slums, no such words are needed. The bottle simply exists, passed hand to hand, generation to generation. As night falls, the streets grow quiet. Windows glow faintly behind soot-stained glass. In room after room, women lie back on straw mattresses, their bodies aching, their spirits worn thin. They swallow the bitter liquid, sigh as warmth spreads, and let themselves drift into a fragile calm. Tomorrow, the bell will toll again, and the cycle will begin anew. For the working poor, opium is not luxury nor scandal. It is survival. The knock on the door is firm, steady, and when it opens, the figure that steps through carries with him an air of certainty. His coat is long, brushed clean despite the rain outside, and his boots leave faint prints across the rug. In his hand is the black leather bag, worn smooth at the handle, the kind every Londoner knows too well. Inside it rests his profession, his authority, his promise of healing. And tonight, within it also rests the vial that will bind you more tightly than any illness ever could. You sit in the parlor, shawl drawn close around your shoulders, the lamp throwing long shadows across the wallpaper. The cough has been sharp these past weeks, the headaches worse, the nights sleepless. Your body feels as though it is being pulled apart slowly, thread by thread. The doctor listens with calm eyes, his quill scratching across the paper pad as though your suffering were no more than a line in his day's record. He nods as you speak of nerves, of fatigue, of the restless grief that clings and will not let go. Then comes his hand, reaching into the bag. He withdraws a bottle of amber glass, small but solid, its contents glinting in the lamplight. He sets it on the table before you with deliberate care, as though offering a gift. His voice is soothing, practiced. This will ease the pain, a few drops only, nothing to fear. The words flow with such confidence that you do not doubt. Respectable women do not question their doctors. Their authority is as binding as law, as sacred as scripture. The label bears neat lettering, a flourish at the bottom. Tincture of Opium. It looks harmless, even elegant. The doctor explains its use in measured tones, noting how it calms the nerves, quiets the mind, soothes the body into rest. He does not speak of what follows after the craving, the chains invisible but unbreakable. He does not need to. For him, the act is complete. The moment the bottle leaves his hand and enters yours, you cradle it carefully, feeling its weight. Already it seems more than glass and liquid, it feels like deliverance. When he stands to leave, he takes your coin with polite efficiency, his eyes kind but distant. Another patient waits on the next street, another home to visit, another bottle to leave behind. He does not linger to see what happens once the cork is loosened, once the first spoonful is taken. His work ends at the threshold. Yours begins. Across the city, countless such bottles change hands in the same way. Doctors, with their quiet authority, place them into the palms of women whose trust is absolute. The gesture is repeated again and again until every household holds one, tucked into cabinets, resting by lamps, hidden in handbags. The doctor's hand is the bridge between need and dependence, between suffering and silence. When the door closes and the sound of his boots fades, you remain alone in the dim parlor. The fire crackles low, the shadows deepen, and the bottle gleams faintly on the table. His words echo in your ears, only a few drops, nothing to fear. You uncork it with trembling fingers, believing him, because you must. The bitter liquid burns your tongue, and the warmth spreads as promised. The doctor has kept his word, yet in that moment, without knowing it, you have taken more than medicine. You have taken the doctor's hand, and it will not let you go. The pain begins as a whisper, a tightness in the temples, a dull throb at the base of the spine, a stiffness in the joints that lingers longer than it should. At first, you dismiss it, another day's fatigue, another sign of the body wearing thin beneath the strain of housework, childbearing, endless hours bent over sewing or ledgers. But as weeks pass, the whisper grows louder. The ache becomes a constant companion, wrapping itself around every movement, every breath, until life itself feels measured in pulses of discomfort. Doctors call it nervous complaint or female trouble, as though naming it gently makes it less cruel. They offer little but sympathy, and, always, the small amber vial. The first drops ease the worst of it, the pounding head softens, the cramped muscles loosen, the waves of pain blur into something distant. For a brief hour, you almost remember what it was like to move without wincing, to stand without bracing yourself against the table. Relief is fleeting, but it is enough to bring you back to the bottle again and again. Soon, the body begins to demand it. Nights without the drops bring sleepless tossing, the pain flaring brighter in the absence of its mask. Mornings arrive with heaviness in the limbs, bones aching as though filled with lead. Tasks that once seemed small, buttoning a gown, lifting a kettle, writing a letter, become ordeals. You tell yourself it is illness, not weakness, not dependence, yet deep inside you feel the shift. The pain is no longer something the laudanum soothes, the laudanum itself sharpens the hunger. In drawing rooms and kitchens alike, women trade quiet confessions. My back will not allow me to work without it. My headaches return the moment the bottle is empty. I cannot manage the children otherwise. Each story is the same, though spoken in different voices, whispered in shame or laughed off as necessity. Pain without end, whether born of body, of grief, or of toil, becomes the justification for another drop. And the pain deepens, fed by the very cure meant to banish it. You see it in faces across London, the laundress, shoulders stooped, eyes dulled by more than fatigue, the merchant's wife, pale as ivory, her smile brittle as glass, the seamstress, hands trembling so fiercely she can barely guide her needle. Each one carries the same weight, each one bound to the same cycle: pain, medicine, relief, and the inevitable return of pain. The city hums with it, though the world pretends not to hear. Tonight, the ache in your body feels endless. You lie curled in bed, sheets damp with sweat, jaw clenched tight. The vial waits on the table, its glow soft in the lamplight. You resist for a moment, whispering promises to yourself, not tonight, not this time. But the pulse of pain grows sharper, louder, until it drowns every thought. At last, with trembling fingers, you lift the spoon, the bitter liquid coating your tongue. Warmth spreads, the pain recedes, and you breathe again. For now, only for now. When the morning comes, the pain will return, stronger than before. It always does. Pain without end is the thread that ties you to the bottle, binding you in a loop that has no beginning and no escape. The parlour glows with lamplight, its curtains drawn against the damp London evening. Coal smoke hangs heavy outside, but in here the air is perfumed with lavender water and candle wax. A fire crackles low, warming the silver teapot that rests upon the table. The women gather in a circle of chairs, their gowns rustling softly, their voices lowered to a hush. At first, the conversation is polite weather, fashion, the latest charity meeting, but soon the words turn, as they always do, to matters less fit for the ears of men. Behind fans and gloved hands the subject arises: laudanum. No one says the word too loudly, but every woman in the room knows it. They speak of it in euphemisms: the drops, the cordial, my remedy. Laughter flutters nervously at each mention, though the sound carries unease. It is not scandal they fear. Respectability shields them from that, but recognition. Each one suspects the others are bound by the same secret chain. Mrs. Harker leans forward, her voice trembling with both shame and relief. She confesses that her nerves no longer calm with a few drops, that she must take double now, sometimes triple. The women murmur their sympathy, nodding with understanding. Lady Wentworth admits to keeping 2 bottles hidden in her dressing table so her husband will not know how quickly they empty. Another confides that she mixes her medicine with wine, the taste easier to bear that way. Each revelation is met with nods, not judgment. The parlour is sanctuary, the only place where such truths may be spoken aloud. You sit among them, listening, your own bottle heavy in your handbag. You feel the words pressing against your lips, the desire to share your own story, to admit the sleepless nights, the trembling hands, the way your thoughts grow frantic when the vial runs low. but you hold back. The whispers are enough. It is enough to know you are not alone. The clock ticks softly on the mantel. The fire hisses, a log shifting. The room feels cloaked, almost conspiratorial, as though the very curtains lean closer to catch the secrets shared within. No one dares speak of cures or of stopping. The whispers are not of freedom, but of survival. How to stretch a bottle longer. Which apothecary sells at the best price? How to feign surprise when the doctor prescribes another vial. The conversation drifts to children, to husbands, to social calls, but the undercurrent remains. Each woman carries her burden, cloaked beneath lace and silk. Their laughter rings, but their eyes tell another story, glazed, tired, haunted. And when the gathering ends, when the carriages arrive and the women wrap themselves against the foggy night, each one leaves with her secret intact, her smile composed, her vial close at hand. The parlour grows quiet again, the whispers dissolving into silence. The chairs stand empty, the fire burns low, and the scent of lavender lingers in the air. Yet the secrets remain, stitched into the fabric of the room itself. London's epidemic is not shouted in the streets, nor printed in bold headlines. It is murmured softly, behind lace curtains and closed doors, carried in parlour whispers that bind women together in silence. The diary rests on the desk, its leather cover worn soft at the corners, its brass clasp dulled by years of use. By day it lies hidden beneath a stack of letters and needlework, an unassuming part of a respectable lady's parlour. By night, when the household is still, and the only sound is the faint hiss of the coal fire, it opens beneath her trembling hand. Ink stains her fingers, the nib scratching quietly across the paper as she spills what cannot be spoken aloud. The entries begin innocently enough. Notes on weather, on callers, on the children's health. Reflections on books read, on sermons heard, on dinners attended. But as the weeks pass, a new refrain threads its way through the pages. The drops. At first, only brief mentions. 1 spoon tonight, slept well. Doctor says I should take a little more when the headaches come. The words are casual, almost cheerful, but the tone shifts with time. You turn the fragile pages and watch as the hand grows uneven, the ink blotched in places where the writer's hand faltered. The entries grow shorter, sharper, more urgent. Could not rest without it. The pain came back, only the vial helps. Twice tonight, though I swore it would only be once. Between the lines you sense the weight of shame pressing down, though the words themselves never name it. Respectable women do not write of addiction. They write of medicine, of remedies, of nervous complaints. But the truth bleeds through the neat script all the same. On some nights, the entries swell with relief, written in hurried bursts after a dose. At last, calm. The silence is sweet. The room feels kind again. On others, despair floods the page. Empty bottle. How shall I endure the night? I promised myself I would stop. I have failed. These confessions are written with such raw honesty that you feel as though the page itself trembles beneath the weight of her despair. The diary holds no answers, only the endless cycle, pain, remedy, relief, regret. Over and over, the pattern repeats, the pages filling with contradictions. Gratitude for the calm, hatred for the need, fear of being discovered. Her words reveal a life lived behind two faces, the composed lady of the drawing room and the restless soul pouring secrets into the quiet pages by lamplight. Sometimes she writes of hiding the bottle, of swearing off it for good. She counts the hours without it, recording her trembling hands, her sleepless eyes. But, inevitably, a later entry betrays the truth. The vial again. I had no choice. The very book that was meant to hold her strength becomes the record of her surrender. The final page you read ends abruptly, mid-sentence, the ink trailing into a blot. Perhaps the lamp sputtered out, or her hand shook too violently to continue. Perhaps she could not bear to write the rest. The clasp is closed once more, the diary returned to its hiding place. Outwardly, the house remains respectable, the lady herself composed, But the diary tells a different story, one written in whispers of ink and shadow, the silent chronicle of a woman bound to her bottle. In London, countless such diaries lie tucked away in drawers and cabinets, never meant for other eyes. Each one holds the same confession, written with trembling hands, that the medicine, which promised relief, has become both torment and companion. Gas lamps flare to life along Drury Lane, their light haloed in the evening mist. Carriages crowd the street, wheels splashing through puddles as passengers descend in silks and velvet. The theatre doors open wide, spilling golden light and the hum of anticipation into the damp air. Inside, the stage waits a world of illusion and brilliance, where voices will soar and gowns will shimmer, where the city forgets itself for a few short hours. Backstage, however, the scene is different. The air smells of sweat, grease paint and dust. Costumes hang from pegs, their sequins dull in the dim glow of lanterns. Actresses sit before mirrors clouded with powder, painting their faces into masks of radiance. Their laughter rings bright, but their hands tremble as they lift tiny vials from hidden pouches. Drops of laudanum slide into teacups, mixed with a splash of wine swallowed quickly before the curtain rises. For the women of the stage, beauty and vitality are not suggestions but demands. Each night requires a voice strong, movements graceful, eyes alive with fire. The city's gaze is merciless applause when they shine, ridicule when they falter. Fatigue is no excuse, nor is grief, nor the frailty of the body. And so, the medicine becomes their secret script, their uncredited co-star. A spoonful steadies a racing heart, calms a trembling hand, wipes the shadow of exhaustion from their faces just long enough for the performance to begin. From the audience, no one sees it. They watch the actress glide beneath the gaslight, her gown catching the glow, her voice carrying through the rafters. They marvel at her poise, at the way she seems to embody youth and passion itself. They do not know that, behind the curtain, moments before her entrance, she pressed a bitter vial to her lips. The illusion holds because it must. But the cost shows in time. Between acts, when the applause fades, she retreats to the wings, her shoulders sagging, her skin pale beneath the powder. The laudanum dulls her pain, but it also dulls her strength. She leans against a wall, breathing shallow, before lifting her chin once more at the stage call. The audience demands the glow, and she gives it, though it eats her alive night after night. You sit among the crowd, swept by the magic, yet your eyes linger on her longer than most. You see the faint glassiness beneath her smile, the slight delay in her movements, the way her laughter carries a brittle edge. You sense the shadow that walks beside her, though it is dressed in silk and hidden in plain sight. When the curtain falls and the house empties, the stage grows dark again. The actress peels away her costume, wipes the paint from her face, and reaches once more for the vial that waits in her bag. The night is not over, it never is. Tomorrow will bring another performance, another round of lights and applause, and with it, another swallow of the cure that both sustains and destroys her. The stage of London shines bright to the city, but in the shadows of its wings lies the same quiet epidemic, disguised in lace and powder, whispered through the lips of actresses who cannot stand without it. The drawing room is arranged with delicate precision. A silver tray gleams on the low table, its teapot steaming faintly, the porcelain cups painted with flowers in pale blues and greens. The fire hums softly in the grate, warming the edges of the carpet where women's skirts brush as they gather in gentle conversation. Outside, London fog presses against the windows, but within, the room glows with domestic grace. Tea is poured, spoons clink, sugar dissolves into amber liquid, and in this ritual, tinctures find their place as easily as cream or lemon. At first glance, the act is innocent. A hostess lifts the polished pot, filling each cup in turn, her smile practiced, her movements smooth. Yet beneath the rustle of silk and the murmur of polite talk, another exchange is taking place. A vial slips from a reticule, hidden beneath lace. A few drops fall quickly into a waiting cup, their bitterness cloaked by the fragrance of bergamot. The spoon stirs, and the tincture vanishes into the tea, invisible, indistinguishable. The guest lifts the cup, sips, sighs softly as warmth spreads through her chest. To anyone watching, it is no more than the pleasure of a well-brewed cup. This is how the epidemic thrives in rituals so ordinary they arouse no suspicion. Afternoon tea is the height of respectability, the mark of a refined household. To lace it with laudanum is not rebellion but continuation, a hidden layer beneath civility. Conversation flows more easily after the drops, laughter loosens, fatigue softens into contentment. The tincture becomes part of the ritual itself, as expected as sugar, as welcome as milk. In some homes the habit is openly shared. A hostess may hint with a smile, "For nerves, my dear, try this." Bottles are brought discreetly to the table, passed hand to hand like secrets wrapped in glass. In others, the practice is solitary. A woman adds her tincture quietly, unnoticed, her need known only to herself. The tea masks the bitterness, making the act gentler, less shameful. Respectability is preserved, even as dependence deepens. Children observe without understanding. They see the careful way their mothers stir the cups, the relief that settles after the first sip, the way conversation brightens. Some will grow to mirror these gestures, carrying them into their own parlors. The ritual repeats itself across generations, stitched into the fabric of London life, unremarkable yet insidious. You sit at such a gathering now, your own cup warm in your hands. The room hums with quiet talk, plans for charity, gossip of neighbors, remarks on the latest novel. But beneath it all lies a shared undercurrent, the unspoken knowledge that many cups contain more than tea. You taste yours, the bitterness faint beneath the bergamot, and feel the familiar loosening spread through your body. The fire burns brighter, the fog outside less oppressive. The tincture has done its work. When the gathering ends, the women rise, smoothing their skirts, their faces calm, their voices steady. They step back into the fog with gloved hands clutching handbags where vials lie hidden. The teapot is emptied, the cups stacked neatly, the tray returned to its place. Nothing in the room betrays what has transpired. Tea and tinctures leave no trace, only the memory of warmth, the illusion of ease, and the certainty that tomorrow the ritual will be repeated again. The river moves slowly, its surface thick and grey beneath the weight of the fog. Barges slide like shadows, their outlines blurred, their lanterns glowing faintly in the murk. Along the embankments the gas lamps burn dim, their light swallowed almost at once, leaving the streets in half-darkness. The Thames, wide and restless, is both artery and grave, its waters carrying the lifeblood of the city while hiding secrets beneath its shifting tide. You walk the river's edge, the mist clinging damp to your cloak, each breath heavy with the smell of coal smoke and brine. The water laps faintly against the stone, a hollow rhythm that echoes the beat of your heart. In your pocket, the vial presses close, its weight more certain than the ground beneath your feet. The city sleeps uneasily, but you are wide awake, the tincture still burning in your veins. For many, the river is escape. Here, women step from narrow alleys, their footsteps muffled on the wet stones, to breathe the damp night air and sip quickly from hidden bottles. Sailors stumble ashore, their voices rough, seeking not just gin but laudanum sold in taverns near the docks. Mothers come with infants wrapped tight, dosing them from spoons before boarding ferries that sway gently in the mist. The Thames watches it all, silent, patient, cloaked in fog. You pause on a bridge, the wood beneath your boots slick with dew. The city spreads dimly on either side, rooftops swallowed by haze, chimneys smudged into the sky. Somewhere nearby, a bell tolls slow, mournful, carried thin across the water. The sound mingles with the cries of gulls and the distant creak of rigging. London feels endless in this fog, its edges dissolved, its heart hidden, and within this obscurity the epidemic thrives. The river has seen it before. Opium arrives by ship, carried in crates unloaded at the docks, destined for apothecaries and market stalls. The same waters that carry coal and grain also bring the tincture that slips into every household. No law halts it, no watchman questions it. The fog swallows the truth just as it swallows the barges, and so the city drinks deeply, unaware or unwilling to see. Your hand drifts to the pocket once more, the glass cool beneath your fingertips. You hesitate, though you know you will not resist. The night is long, the silence heavy. You unstopper the cork, tilt the vial, and swallow quickly, grimacing at the bitterness. The warmth spreads almost at once, softening the sharp bite of the fog, loosening the ache in your chest. The river shifts below, its surface glimmering faintly as though it, too, has been soothed. But as you stand there, staring into the depths, unease stirs. How many have leaned on these same stones, the vial in hand, the fog pressing close, the temptation of the water below too strong to resist? The Thames holds them now, its current carrying them away into silence. The river is not only a witness but a keeper, its fog thick enough to hide despair, its tide strong enough to claim those who cannot bear another night. You turn from the edge, the city still lost in shadow. The fog presses harder, wrapping every lamp, every roof, every step in obscurity. Behind you, the Thames rolls on, patient and eternal, its waters carrying the unseen toll of London's quietest epidemic. The word does not exist, not yet. There are no pamphlets warning of it, no doctors daring to speak it aloud, no sermons thundered against it from the pulpit. In Victorian London, what chains women to the bottle is described only as nerves, as female weakness, as restless nights. Respectability demands softer words, words that do not stain, and so the truth slips unseen beneath silks and shawls, an affliction without a name, a hunger that grows stronger each day. You sit in the parlour, the vial resting within reach, its amber liquid glowing faintly beside the lamp. You tell yourself it is only medicine, as the doctor said. You tell yourself it is no different than the tonic for digestion or the cordial for coughs, and yet, deep down, you feel the shift. What began as a remedy for sleepless nights has become a need that rules the hours. Without it, your hands shake, your heart races, your thoughts spin like the wheels of a carriage over cobblestones. With it, the world softens, but only for a time. Soon, the ache returns, sharper than before. Across London, countless women feel the same hunger, though few dare to name it even to themselves. They speak instead of "my remedy," "my comfort," "my little friend." They whisper in drawing rooms, in sick beds, in kitchens, about how many drops they require now, how quickly the bottle empties, how unbearable the nights are without it. The words dependence, compulsion, addiction, none of these are spoken, and so the silence deepens, leaving each woman to believe she suffers alone. The body tells its own story. Faces grow pale, eyes sink into dark hollows, movements slow with the weight of exhaustion. Yet these changes are explained away as frailty, as natural decline, as the burden of womanhood. Husbands shake their heads at their wives' delicate constitutions. Doctors nod gravely and write another prescription. Children grow accustomed to mothers who drift into stupors, who sit silent by the fire, who smile faintly but seem always far away. Still, the city refuses to see. Addiction has no name, and what cannot be named cannot be condemned. Society prefers its illusions, prefers to believe that respectable homes are untouched by vice, that the bottle sitting discreetly on the mantel is merely medicine, that the women who sip from it are not chained but cared for. The silence protects reputations, even as it destroys lives. You write in your diary, the nib scratching unevenly across the page, "I said I would stop. I cannot. I need it." The ink blots where your hand trembles. You close the book quickly, hiding it away, ashamed of words that feel too raw to exist. Tomorrow, you will smile at callers, pour tea, and speak of the weather. No one will know that the bottle rules your every hour. And so the days pass, each one bound to the same ritual. The cork is pulled, the spoon filled, the bitter liquid swallowed. Relief comes, then fades, then demands again. The cycle tightens, invisible yet unbreakable. Addiction lives here, though no one dares to call it by its true name. It is silence that binds you, silence that isolates you, silence that ensures this shadow epidemic thrives in every corner of London. The fog along London's docks carries more than the smell of fish and coal smoke. It carries whispers of battles fought thousands of miles away, where ships flying the Union Jack unloaded crates of poppies onto Chinese shores. The newspapers call them victories, treaties signed, ports opened, trade secured. But here, in the city's narrow streets and fine parlours alike, the echo of those wars resounds not in politics, but in bottles of amber glass resting on bedside tables. You stand on the wharf, watching sailors roll barrels down the gangplank, their boots slick with river water. Among the cargo are crates marked with stenciled letters, their contents hidden but well known. Opium in raw form, bound for markets and apothecaries. The same substance that hollowed empires abroad now seeps quietly into the veins of London itself, not in smoking dens filled with haze, but in respectable households where mothers dose their infants and ladies sip tinctures with their tea. The war fought across oceans has returned home, not with cannon fire, but with the hush of spoons against porcelain. Parliament debates victories, trade balances, the glory of empire. Few speak of the irony that the very substance forced upon another nation floods their own, dressed in the garb of medicine. Doctors prescribe it without hesitation, apothecaries sell it freely, advertisements promise relief for every ailment. Respectable women purchase the fruit of conquest without ever naming it. They call it laudanum, cordial, syrup. They do not call it what it truly is, the same opium that toppled dynasties, the same poison that fueled war. In drawing rooms the echo is faint but present. A lady reads aloud from the Times, her voice smooth as she recounts how Britain secured new ports and new markets. She does not glance at the small vial glowing on the mantel, nor at the shadows beneath her friend's eyes. The empire grows rich on the trade, but its daughters grow pale, their lives shortened by the same substance their nation boasts of exporting. Among the poor the echo is louder. In cramped alleys, diluted syrups are sold for pennies, the residue of the empire's vast trade filtering down to those who can barely afford bread. Mothers hush hungry infants with spoonfuls of opium-laced mixtures, the children sinking into unnatural stillness. The war's spoils feed London's hunger, one drop at a time, until even the smallest cradles are bound by its grasp. The newspapers never print those stories. They speak of the Orient, of treaties and triumphs, of ships laden with riches. They do not print the trembling of hands in London's parlours, the pallor of women who cannot sleep without their vials. The echo of empire is polite, silence at home, devastation abroad. As you leave the docks, the mist curls heavy around the warehouses, swallowing the sound of waves against stone. Somewhere far to the east, families mourn the wars Britain has wrought. Somewhere here in London, women slip drops into their tea, unaware or unwilling to admit that their medicine carries the same echo. The empire's victory lives in their veins, in their dreams, in the endless hunger for more. The opium wars may have been fought overseas, but their shadow stretches across the Thames, settling in every household touched by the bitter drop. The smell strikes first, disinfectant sharp in the nose, mingled with coal smoke drifting through broken windows, and beneath it all the sour tang of sickness. The charity ward is a long, narrow room, its walls bare plaster, its ceiling blackened from years of soot. Beds line either side, iron frames with thin mattresses, their occupants hidden beneath grey blankets that rise and fall with shallow breaths. The place hums with muffled coughs, with groans pressed into pillows, with the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes across worn floorboards. You step quietly between the rows, the air heavy with damp and despair. Here are the women's society forgets widows, factory hands, servants dismissed without reference, all drawn by the promise of free care. Their faces are pale, their lips dry, their eyes ringed dark as bruises. Some tremble, their hands twisting the sheets, their bodies restless even in exhaustion. Others lie unnaturally still, their chests rising only faintly, their mouths half open in a stupor deeper than sleep. At each bedside, the same story. Bottles emptied, spoons lifted too often, pain hidden beneath the guise of respectability, until there was no hiding left. The nurses move briskly, their aprons starched, their expressions trained into neutrality. They whisper to one another, glancing at patients with knowing eyes. They do not call it addiction, they have no such word to use, but they recognize the signs. They speak instead of nervous collapse, of chronic weakness, of ladies ruined by medicine. They wipe fevered brows, press cool water to lips, and measure out doses carefully, though sometimes their own hands hesitate, for in a locked cabinet behind the desk rests the very same vial that brought these women here. Doctors make their rounds with solemn authority, their footsteps echoing. They ask questions, tap notes into ledgers, prescribe tonics. Rarely do they speak of laudanum as the cause. More often, they mark consumption, hysteria, or exhaustion. The truth lingers in silence, unspoken but visible in every hollow face. To acknowledge it would mean admitting the cure itself is a poison, and society is not ready for such words. At the far end of the ward, a mother lies with her child beside her. The little one stirs fitfully, whimpering in half-sleep, the faint bitterness of the drop still clinging to her breath. The mother's eyes open, glassy and unfocused, her hand reaching weakly for the bottle no longer hers. The nurse takes it away, tucks it back into the locked cabinet, and the mother's hand falls helplessly to her side. In the evenings, the ward dims. Lamps glow faintly, shadows stretching long across the floor. The women murmur in their sleep, their voices carrying fragments of prayers, fragments of grief. Some will recover enough to leave, their bodies steadied, though their hunger for the vial will never fade. Others will not rise again, their deaths attributed to vague ailments, their names written in ledgers and forgotten. The charity ward stands as London's quiet confessional. Behind its doors, the truth of the epidemic is plain. Laudanum has woven itself into every corner of life, binding rich and poor alike. But outside, society continues to avert its gaze. Donations fill the coffers, sermons praise the good work, yet no one speaks of the rows of iron beds, of the women who lie there patients not of illness alone, but of the cure they could not escape. The study is dim, its shutters drawn tight against the grey London morning. Papers litter the desk, ink stains spreading like shadows across the wood. A candle, guttering low, throws just enough light to reveal the figure hunched over the table, quill scratching in hurried strokes. The writer pauses often, lifting the vial at his elbow to his lips, grimacing at the bitterness before pressing on. His sentences stagger, then swell, his words pulled from a mind that wavers between sharp brilliance and fogged stupor. Laudanum has been his companion for years now. At first, he called it inspiration. A few drops before the page, and the world unfolded with color and clarity. The walls dissolved, the city's noise faded, and visions poured through him, poems that glowed with fire, stories that shimmered with dream. Readers marveled at his work, called him genius, whispered of his talent as though it were otherworldly. What they did not see was the bottle, always within reach, the true muse of his midnight hours. But genius carries its price. The entries in his journal reveal the truth. I cannot think without it. The words come only after the drop. Am I writer, or am I only the shadow of this bottle? The confession flows in ink as it cannot flow in speech. To friends he appears animated, eccentric, aflame with ideas. To the page he admits despair. He writes of nights spent trembling when the vial ran dry, of mornings when his body ached as though he had been beaten, of the fear that his gift is not his own but borrowed, paid for in years of life slipping away. Others share his secret, though few confess so openly. In garrets and parlours across London, pens move in the same pattern, words dripping through haze, inspiration bought in drops, Some call it the artist's curse, others the artist's blessing. But in truth, it is dependence, masked by brilliance. Works celebrated in salons and serialized in papers are often born of the same bitter medicine that ruins bodies in silence. The writer leans back, closing his eyes as another wave of warmth spreads through him. He tells himself he will stop, that this page will be his last written under the drug's influence. But the quill dips again. The words spill out. The confession deepens. He writes of shame, of deception, of the lie that the world praises. They cheer the poem, but it is not mine. It belongs to the bottle. The candle sputters, the ink dries in blots, the room grows colder. He folds the pages carefully, tucking them beneath the pile where critics and readers will never see. His published works will carry no hint of confession, only beauty, brilliance, visions shaped by Poppy's hand. But in his hidden pages, the truth lies waiting, raw and unadorned. The confession is not unique, only rare in its honesty. Across the city, countless words are written through the same haze, countless voices echo the same despair. Yet London praises the genius, never asking the cost. The writer closes his eyes, the vial still warm in his palm. His confession lies in ink, silent witness to a truth no stage or salon will ever speak aloud. The drawing room is prepared as always, fire glowing low in the grate, silver polished to a gleam, lace curtains drawn against the fog. Guests gather, their voices weaving polite conversation, their laughter smooth and measured. On the surface, nothing is amiss. The teacups are filled, the gowns are pressed, the men's coats brushed free of soot. Respectability reigns here, as it must. Yet beneath the veneer, cracks begin to show, hairline fractures in the mask society wears so carefully. You notice it first in the trembling of a hand. A lady reaches for her cup, her gloved fingers quivering, though she smiles as though nothing is wrong. She speaks of the weather, of the latest performance at Covent Garden, her voice steady despite the faint glassiness of her eyes. Another woman laughs too loudly, her cheeks flushed not with wine but with the warmth of something stronger slipped into her tea. Their husbands, seated nearby, glance but say nothing. They are accustomed to these small oddities now. Respectability demands silence. But silence cannot hide everything. A bottle falls once, clattering against the floorboards, its cork rolling beneath a chair. For a moment the room freezes, the sound ringing louder than any carriage wheel outside. The hostess bends quickly, retrieves it with practiced grace, and places it back upon the sideboard as though it were no more than perfume. Conversation resumes, but the whispers linger. Eyes dart, fans flutter, and the crack in the mask grows wider. In other homes, the fractures are plainer still. A mother too pale to rise from her chair, her children carrying her vial as dutifully as they would fetch her sewing. A widow forgetting her words mid-sentence, her diary filled with ink blots and half-finished thoughts. A governess drifting into stupor while her charges squabble unheeded. Respectability can no longer cover what the body reveals: tremors, hollow cheeks, heavy lids. The city begins to notice, though few dare to speak it openly. The newspapers hint at it in guarded phrases. A rising complaint among ladies of refinement, an unfortunate dependence on certain tinctures. The words never accuse, but the meaning is clear. Satirical sketches appear in cheap pamphlets, showing matrons slumped in chairs with bottles in hand, their respectability mocked with cruel exaggeration. Behind closed doors, families whisper of cousins or sisters, too fond of her medicine. The mask cracks further, exposing what was once hidden behind lace and lamplight. And yet, the epidemic persists. The bottles still stand on mantels, still slip into handbags, still gleam on apothecary shelves. The cracks do not stop the ritual, they only reveal its cost. Respectability remains the armor, but it is dented now, chipped, too fragile to contain the truth much longer. As the evening gathering ends, the guests rise, their smiles practiced, their farewells polite. But you see the stiffness in their movements, the glassy sheen in their eyes, the way their hands linger protectively over handbags carrying their secret vials. The fire burns low, shadows stretch across the floor, and the mask of respectability slips another inch. Behind it lies not scandal, not sin, but quiet dependence, an epidemic too vast for society to conceal forever. The house lies silent, yet your body will not rest. The fire has burned to ash, the lamp flickers low, and still your eyes remain wide in the dark. Outside, fog presses heavy against the windows, wrapping the city in muffled silence. The air smells faintly of damp wool and smoke, but beneath it lingers another scent, the bitterness of laudanum, rising faintly from the empty glass on the bedside table. You had taken your measure, as always. Enough, you told yourself, to ease the nerves, to bring quiet to the mind, yet tonight it has betrayed you. At first, drowsiness comes, heavy and familiar, drawing you downward into the half-dream where thought dissolves into haze. But then the visions begin. Shapes move in the corners of the room, though no one is there. Shadows stretch across the walls, bending into forms that whisper without sound. Your breath grows shallow, your heart pounds, and you realize this is not sleep at all, but something darker. You are trapped awake yet unable to move, caught in a fog, not outside the window but inside your very mind. The terrors take many forms. Some nights it is water rising, the Thames swelling black and endless, pulling you under. Other nights it is footsteps behind you, slow and deliberate, though the room is empty. Faces appear, loved ones lost, their eyes hollow, their mouths moving in silence, accusing. You reach for them, but they dissolve like smoke. You try to wake, but the body lies heavy, pinned to the mattress. And so you endure, trapped in the visions until dawn forces them back into shadow. This is the price of the drops. Once they brought rest, soft and dreamless, the sweet oblivion of nights forgotten. But with time, the comfort curdles. The body grows restless even in stupor. The mind rebels against the haze, clawing its way into nightmares more vivid than waking life. What was once escape becomes prison. You tell yourself tomorrow will be different, that the next bottle will soothe more kindly, yet each night proves the lie anew. Others know the same torment, though few confess it. In whispered conversations, women speak of strange dreams, of restless visions that haunt them after the medicine. They call them fancies, nervous illusions, too ashamed to admit the truth, that the cure itself brings terror. Doctors dismiss such confessions, prescribing larger doses, deeper draughts, until the nightmares only thicken. The city itself seems to share your visions. Streets at night are cloaked in mist, figures loom and vanish, the river reflects lanterns like 1,000 ghostly eyes. To walk alone is to step into a dream already half-formed, and so the terrors of night bleed into the day until all of London feels like a stage set for hallucination. At last, dawn comes, pale and weak, seeping through the curtains. The visions dissolve with the light, leaving only exhaustion. You sit upright, the sheets damp with sweat, the vial still waiting on the table. Your hands tremble as you lift it, though every part of you recoils. You know it caused the terrors, yet you cannot face another day without it. The cork twists free, the spoon rises once more. The night is gone, but the cycle endures. Night terrors return, as surely as the fog over the Thames. The vial on the table is no longer enough. Its amber glow, once a promise of comfort, has dulled. Spoonfuls that once soothed now drag sluggishly, their relief too brief, their warmth too thin. Women across London murmur the same complaint. The drops no longer hold the body, no longer calm the restless nights, or silence the constant ache. And so, in doctors' bags and apothecaries' drawers, something new begins to appear, sleek, shining, and far more dangerous. The hypodermic needle has arrived. At first it is spoken of with reverence, as though it were a marvel of science, a triumph of progress. Physicians boast of its precision, its swiftness, its ability to deliver the medicine directly to the very root of pain. No longer must the stomach churn with bitterness, no longer must the drops be disguised in tea or wine. With a simple prick of steel, the body yields to opium's embrace in moments. Respectable journals praise the invention, calling it a blessing for the chronically ill, a miracle for those too weak to swallow. You sit in the doctor's parlor, the lamp casting its glow on polished instruments laid out like relics. He explains calmly, with the same authority he once used when placing a corked vial in your hand. The syringe gleams, slender and cold, its needle fine as a hair, its barrel glassy and delicate. He fills it carefully, the liquid dark within, and with practiced ease he presses it to your arm. The sting is sharp, but fleeting. Then comes the flood, quicker, stronger, deeper than any spoonful ever brought. Pain dissolves at once, nerves collapse into calm, the body slumps in instant surrender. It feels less like medicine and more like deliverance. But deliverance never lasts. Soon the body remembers, and the ache returns sharper than before. What once required a spoonful now demands another prick, another flood. The needle offers swiftness, but it also binds more tightly, linking flesh and steel in a chain that grows heavier each day. In drawing rooms, the whispers shift. Some women now speak of injections with hushed awe, claiming they have found true relief at last. Others confess quietly that they fear it, that the swiftness frightens them, that the craving it awakens feels more monstrous than the drops ever did. Behind curtains and closed doors, syringes slip into pale arms, leaving tiny red marks hidden beneath sleeves and gloves. Respectability hides them, as it hid the vials before, but the shadows they cast grow darker. The poor, too, encounter it. Needles find their way into tenements, passed from hand to hand, their sharpness dulled but still potent enough to bind those who dare. Diluted morphine fills the glass barrels, bringing instant relief to aching bodies worn from mills and factories. Yet the cost is the same: trembling hands, hollow eyes, nights that end in stupor rather than rest. The city does not yet see the full danger. Newspapers praise the marvel, doctors celebrate their progress. But in countless homes, women sit slumped in chairs, their arms marked by pinpricks, their faces pale, their breaths slowed. The needle has arrived, and with it a quicker path into the same silent chains. The spoon once whispered its promises slowly. The needle speaks them all at once, and louder. And in its voice lies a new peril, one that will spread through London like fog rolling over the Thames, unseen yet unstoppable. The streets of London are crowded as ever, carriages clattering over cobblestones, vendors crying their wares, children darting between wheels with shouts of laughter. Yet among the bustle, certain faces stand apart. You notice them in passing, pale in the lamplight, their cheeks drawn tight, their lips cracked and dry. Eyes once bright now sink into dark hollows, their gaze unfocused, drifting past the world as though it were already a memory. These are the faces of women bound to the bottle, carved by years of drops that promised comfort but left only ruin. At gatherings, they hide behind powder and rouge. The flush of paint on the cheek, the dust of white across the brow, the veil lowered just enough to obscure the tremor in the mouth. In the half-light of parlors, the illusion almost holds. They laugh, they pour tea, they nod politely as conversation swirls around them. But when the mask slips, when the lamplight catches too directly, when the laughter fades, you see the truth. The hollow beneath the eyes, the trembling of the hand that lifts the cup, the shadow of exhaustion that no powder can disguise. Children notice it too, though they do not understand. They tug at their mother's skirts, asking why she sits so still, why she stares at the fire without speaking. They see the vial clutched in her hand, though they do not yet know its name. To them, she is distant, a figure of silence rather than warmth. Their memories will hold that hollowed face long after the bottle is gone. The poor cannot mask it at all. In narrow alleys and tenement rooms, women sit slumped against walls, their faces ghostly in the thin light. Neighbors glance but say nothing. The sight is too common. They whisper of illness, of frailty, of nerves broken by hardship, but the truth lingers in the glass bottles lined on shelves, in the spoons left sticky on tables. Hunger gnaws their bodies, yes, but laudanum consumes them more swiftly, hollowing them from within until only shadows remain. Doctors recognize the look, though they rarely name it. They call it chronic weakness, general decline, debility of the constitution. They write prescriptions with solemn hands, never admitting their role in deepening the hollows they see before them. For to acknowledge it would mean confessing that the cure itself devours those who take it. And so the hollowed faces continue to appear, one after another, filling wards, filling parlors, filling the very streets of the city. You walk through Covent Garden one evening, the lamps glowing faint in the fog. Amid the crowd, you see her, a woman in a fine shawl, her step unsteady, her gaze glassy. She pauses at a stall, the light catching her face, and you see it clearly, the sharpness of bone, the emptiness of eye, the shadow where health once lived. She clutches her reticule tightly, the shape of a bottle pressing through the fabric. She disappears into the fog, but the image lingers. London thrives, loud and bright, but within it walk countless women already half ghosts. Their faces are the city's quiet confession, hollowed by medicine that promised relief, by a cure that steals more than it gives. They pass among the crowds unseen, yet their absence of life is a presence of its own shadows carved into flesh, reminders of the epidemic no one dares to name. The apothecary's shop smells of camphor, dried herbs, and dust. Light filters through the high windows, catching on shelves of glass jars that glow amber and green. Behind the counter, the apothecary moves with quiet precision, measuring powders, wrapping parcels, and pouring tinctures into vials no larger than a thumb. His hands are steady, his manner professional, yet the truth of his trade lies not only in the bottles that line the walls, but in the great leather book resting open on the desk behind him. The ledger is thick, its spine cracked, its pages yellowed at the edges. Each line is filled in neat script, the names of customers marching down in careful rows. Dates, amounts, payments, all recorded with a precision that leaves no room for doubt. At a glance, it is a simple record of commerce, no different than any shopkeeper's account. But when you linger over the pages, patterns emerge. The same names repeat week after week. The quantities grow steadily larger. Some lines end abruptly, with no further entries, as though the need ceased suddenly, perhaps by death, perhaps by ruin. You lean closer, tracing the ink with your eyes. Here is a lady of refinement, her purchases increasing steadily, each entry signed in the apothecary's confident hand. Here is a seamstress from the alley nearby, scraping together coins for the smallest vial, returning again and again until her name vanishes. Here are mothers, widows, governesses, even clergymen's wives, all united not by station but by dependence, each tethered to the bottle recorded in black ink on the page. The apothecary does not speak of what the ledger reveals. To him, it is business, nothing more. When asked, he will say that laudanum is a respectable medicine, prescribed by physicians, purchased by ladies and laborers alike. His duty is to supply, not to question. Yet in the privacy of his shop, he sees the hollows in their cheeks, the trembling of their hands as they pass over the coins. He knows which customers will return before the week is out, knows whose bottles are emptied too quickly, knows which names will soon fall silent. The ledger tells him, even if the world outside pretends not to see. Sometimes, late at night, he runs his fingers down the columns, pausing at names now crossed out. He remembers their faces, the pale governess, the widow with haunted eyes, the young mother who carried a child on her hip. Each one came with the same request, spoken in voices both weary and hopeful. More drops, please, just enough to last. He gave them what they asked, wrote their names, and watched them fade. The ledger is not meant as confession, but it reads as one. Each line is a testament to London's quiet epidemic, written not in headlines or sermons but in tidy script, page after page. It holds the city's hidden story, one of dependence disguised as medicine, one of countless lives bound to the apothecary's hand. When the shop closes and the lamps are snuffed, the ledger remains, its pages rest heavy with silence, carrying the names of the living and the lost alike. No monument will be raised for them, no obituary will speak of their struggle. But here, in the apothecary's ledger, their presence endures, a record of a city held fast by the bitter drop. London wakes each morning to the same rhythm, the toll of church bells, the clatter of wheels on cobblestones, the call of vendors pushing carts through the mist. The city bustles with life, its noise and smoke rising like proof of progress. Yet beneath the clamour lies another rhythm, quieter but relentless, the sound of corks pulled from bottles, of spoons lifted in secret, of sighs released as bitter drops spread warmth through tired veins. It is an epidemic, vast and unrelenting, but it passes unseen because it makes no noise. It is the silence that conceals it, the silence that sustains it. In drawing rooms, women sip tea and speak of novels, all the while hiding vials within their handbags. In nurseries, mothers hush their infants not with lullabies, but with tinctures. In tenements, factory hands dose themselves before dawn to endure the long hours ahead. The epidemic touches every street, every class, every corner of the city, yet no one dares to name it. Respectability cannot bear such words, and so it is smothered in softer phrases. For nerves, for sleeplessness, for relief. Doctors play their part in the silence. With solemn expressions they prescribe the same cure to patient after patient, filling their ledgers with instructions written in elegant script. They see the hollowed cheeks, the trembling hands, the dullness settling over once bright eyes. Yet they choose restraint, speaking only of chronic weakness or nervous decline. The truth is too dangerous to admit, for it would mean acknowledging that the medicine itself has become the affliction. Newspapers skirt the subject too. Advertisements for soothing syrups and pain-killing tonics fill their pages, printed beside reports of Parliament and theatre reviews. When rare stories appear of lives ruined by opium, they are buried deep in the columns, softened by vague language. Never names, never clear causes. The public prefers not to look too closely. They know the bottles on their own shelves, and they would rather not see their reflections in print. The epidemic is not like plague, not like cholera or smallpox that ravage in violent waves. It creeps instead, quiet and steady, like fog settling over the river. It does not empty the streets overnight, but hollows them slowly, leaving women pale and weary, children thin and still, families diminished without explanation. Deaths are attributed to weakness, to frailty, to life itself. The true cause lies corked in amber glass, disguised as respectability. You feel it in your own body, the nights that demand the vial, the mornings that begin in haze, the certainty that without it you cannot endure. You tell yourself it is medicine, that everyone takes it, that it cannot be wrong when society accepts it so readily. Yet deep inside, you know, it is not healing you, it is consuming you drop by drop. The city continues, loud and busy, its streets thrumming with progress, but beneath the noise runs the silence of thousands bound to their bottles. A silence heavy as stone, carried in every parlour, every tenement, every heart that cannot beat without the drug. It is London's great unspoken truth, the silent epidemic, spreading without name, without voice, yet leaving its mark on all who live within its fog. The nursery is quiet, its wallpaper faded with roses, its floor scattered with toys left untouched. A young girl sits cross-legged by the fire, her doll clutched loosely in her lap. She watches her mother from the corner of her eye, pretending to play, but her gaze keeps returning to the small bottle on the table. The cork is worn, the label smudged, and yet her mother's hands reach for it with reverence, as though it were a relic. The child does not yet know its name, only that the house moves to its rhythm. She has learned to read the signs. When her mother's brow grows tight, when her voice trembles with fatigue, when the nights stretch long with restless pacing, the bottle appears. A spoon is filled, the bitter liquid swallowed, and soon the woman's shoulders ease, her eyes grow heavy, her words soften. The child hears the sigh, sees the change, and stores it silently in her mind. This is how life is managed. This is how pain is quieted. At first, curiosity makes her bold. One evening, while her mother sleeps in her chair, the girl creeps to the table, lifting the bottle in both hands. The liquid clings thick to the glass, darker than tea, almost red in the lamplight. She tilts it gently, mesmerized by the way it moves, heavy and slow. Her mother stirs, and quickly the bottle is set down again, but already the lesson has begun. Later the girl becomes the helper. Her mother calls softly from the chair, "Fetch the spoon, child, just a few drops." And she obeys, careful not to spill, her small fingers learning the weight of glass, the angle of the cork, the measure of liquid. She is praised for her steadiness, for her usefulness, and pride mixes with unease. She does not understand the danger, only that this act brings calm, that it is part of her duty, as natural as fetching shawls or trimming lamps. As she grows, she hears the whispers of other women. At teas and gatherings, when the parlor is filled with rustle of skirts and low laughter, she notices how many handbags carry bottles like her mother's. She hears the way ladies speak in guarded tones, calling it a comfort or the only cure for nerves. She watches their children too, other girls who, like her, are sent to fetch spoons, who carry the vials without question. It is not one household but many, not one mother but an entire city teaching its daughters the same quiet lesson. And so the habit passes, not through words but through example. Respectable women believe they are managing their pain, their grief, their sleeplessness. Yet in doing so, they show their daughters how to endure life with a bottle always near. The girls learn without knowing they are learning, their hands steady, their eyes watchful, their futures already shaped. The young girl sits again by the fire, her doll forgotten. Her mother sighs as the drops spread warmth through her body, and once more she praises her daughter for being so helpful. The girl smiles faintly, but in her heart she feels the weight of the lesson. A daughter learns not by books or sermons, but by the small rituals repeated each night, the cork pulled, the spoon filled, the bitter liquid swallowed, and one day she too will know its taste. The bottle stands empty on the bedside table, its cork discarded, its glass smeared with the residue of countless measures. For days, the woman has told herself it must end, that the drops which once promised rest have become her master. And so she has stopped, locking herself away in the narrow chamber, determined to break free. But the silence that follows is not peace. It is torment, creeping in shadows, gnawing at body and mind alike. The first night brings sweat. She lies beneath damp sheets, the chill of the air sharp on her skin while her body burns as though with fever. Her hands tremble against the mattress, grasping at nothing, her breath shallow and quick. She closes her eyes, but sleep does not come. Instead, visions crowd her in the darkness, voices whispering from the corners, shapes moving just beyond her reach. She turns, she prays, she clutches the pillow, but the shadows remain. By the second night, her body aches as though every joint has been unhinged, every bone ground to powder. Cramps knot her stomach, and waves of nausea rise until she can no longer eat. Her eyes grow hollow, her lips crack, and still she refuses the vial. She paces the floor in her nightdress, the boards creaking beneath her restless steps, whispering to herself that she will endure. But each hour stretches into eternity, each minute a battle against the craving that claws inside her chest. The servants whisper outside the door. They hear her crying out in the night, hear the thump of her body falling against the wall, the scrape of furniture dragged across the floor. They bring water, broth, anything she might take. But she turns away, shaking, muttering that she must not, she cannot. They do not understand. No one does. To them, laudanum is a medicine, harmless when taken with care. They cannot imagine the shadows it leaves behind when it is gone. By the third night, terror takes hold. Her mind fractures under the weight of exhaustion. She sees figures moving through the room, her dead husband at the foot of the bed, her children's faces pale and accusing in the firelight. She clutches her rosary, murmuring prayers, but the beads slip from her sweating hands. The shadows whisper more loudly now, filling the chamber with voices only she can hear. She begs for silence, presses her hands to her ears, yet the cries grow sharper. She lasts 5 nights before the will breaks. Her body is wasted, her spirit raw, her mind frayed like old cloth. When at last she sends for the apothecary, the relief is immediate. The vial returns, the drops burn her throat, and warmth floods her once more. The shadows retreat, the whispers fade, and she collapses into uneasy sleep. The attempt is over. London does not see these battles. They are fought in locked rooms, in silence, away from the gaze of neighbors. The world sees only the return of a woman pale but composed, her smile faint but present, her vial once more close at hand. No one speaks of the withdrawal in shadows, of the nights endured in torment, of the failure that follows. It is easier to call it illness, easier to resume the drops, easier to surrender than to face the darkness again. And so the cycle continues, hidden, unspoken, as countless women fight their wars in silence and lose. The parlor is dim, its curtains drawn tight, the air scented with beeswax and incense. A circle of chairs has been arranged around a small table, upon which rests a single glass and a pair of candles burning low. Women sit in silence, their hands folded in laps, their faces pale and expectant. Some wear mourning veils, others plain shawls, but all have come with the same longing to hear a voice beyond the veil, to touch the unseen. It is the age of spiritualism, and London's grief has found a stage in darkened rooms. The medium enters quietly, her eyes heavy-lidded, her steps measured. She speaks in whispers, her voice soothing, promising communion with the departed. Yet, beneath her calm exterior lies her own secret, the vial in her pocket, taken in hurried drops before the séance began. The laudanum softens her nerves, loosens her tongue, and lends her visions a dreamlike clarity. The words flow more easily, the trance comes more quickly, the illusions shimmer with greater force. Those gathered do not question. They too know the comfort of tinctures. Many have taken a dose before arriving, steadying their hands, calming their hearts before daring to call upon spirits. The line between drug and vision blurs in the haze. Is the voice that answers their questions truly from beyond, or from within their own fevered minds? No one dares to ask. To doubt would be to break the fragile peace that the ritual provides. You sit among them, the candlelight flickering across faces, etched with loss. A mother clutches the locket of a child buried too soon, her eyes glassy with both grief and tincture. A widow holds her breath, waiting for her husband's name to be spoken in the medium's trembling voice. Around the circle, sighs rise as the glass trembles faintly, as whispers seem to form in the shadows. The women lean forward, convinced that the spirits have answered. In truth, the comfort comes not from the dead but from the laudanum coursing through their veins, dulling sorrow into something bearable, weaving hallucination into faith. The séances multiply across the city. Parlours in Mayfair, drawing rooms in Bloomsbury, tenement chambers in Whitechapel all host circles of women seeking solace. Spiritualism becomes fashionable, a respectable guise for grief, yet behind the fashion lies dependency. Mediums rely on the drug to sustain their visions, and their followers rely on it to believe. Together they create a theatre of shadows, each participant complicit in the illusion. Doctors shake their heads, muttering of hysteria and delusion. Clergymen warn against false prophets and the dangers of the occult. But the women come all the same, clutching their bottles, their faith, their sorrow. For in a city where loss is constant, where cholera sweeps streets, where factories claim lives daily, where infants die before their first words. The promise of reunion, however faint, is too precious to surrender. As the séance ends, the candles are snuffed, and the room sinks into darkness. The women rise slowly, their faces calm, their burdens lightened, if only for a while. They step back into the foggy London night, their vials hidden once more in handbags and pockets. The spirits may not have answered, but the tincture has, and that for many is comfort enough. The book lies open on the parlour table, its pages lit by the glow of a single lamp. A woman bends over it, her finger tracing each line, her lips moving silently as she reads. The story draws her in, not for its romance or its drama, but for something subtler, a character who drifts in and out of shadows, pale, fragile, dependent upon a mysterious remedy kept always near. The author never names it outright, yet the readers know. Those who have held the same vial, swallowed the same bitter drops, recognize themselves in the ink. Victorian literature, so often bound by propriety, rarely speaks directly of laudanum. Respectability demands euphemism, not accusation. And yet, the epidemic seeps into novels and poems, into essays and serialized tales. Writers whisper it between the lines. A heroine too delicate to rise from her bed, a widow soothed only by her nightly cordial, a poet haunted by visions more vivid than waking life. Readers nod knowingly, their eyes lingering over those passages longer than the rest. They see themselves reflected in the characters' silences. Opium haunts not only the fictional. In diaries and letters published posthumously, fragments of confession emerge. Great minds, poets whose works still echo through London streets, admit in half-veiled phrases that their muse is tincture-born. Their visions of paradise, their journeys into dreamlike worlds, are not mere flights of imagination but wanderings through laudanum haze. Critics praise the beauty, the brilliance, without naming the shadow beneath. To accuse genius of dependence would be to tarnish art itself, and so the truth is left to whisper. You recall the magazines that arrive each week, their serialized tales devoured by women across the city. Between accounts of family honor and tales of courtship, there appear the same subtle themes, characters weakened by unnamed illnesses, soothed by unnamed remedies, their decline graceful rather than grotesque. Readers write letters to the editors, praising the realism of such portrayals. Yet beneath the polite phrases lies recognition, sympathy, perhaps even longing. The story is theirs, though cloaked in fiction. In private, the whispers grow louder. Book clubs and reading circles discuss characters who seem too fond of their medicine, trading glances that say more than words. Poems are read aloud in drawing rooms, lines describing sleep that drips like poppies, or visions born of bitter cups. Listeners sigh, their thoughts drifting to bottles in their own cabinets. Literature becomes both mirror and veil, exposing what cannot be named, yet concealing it beneath artistry. Not all portrayals are sympathetic. Satirical sketches mock women slumped in chairs, their vials clutched like lovers. Pamphlets warn in sensational tones of the ruin caused by such habits. But even here, in mockery, the epidemic seeps into the printed word. London cannot escape its own reflection, however distorted. The woman closes her book at last, her hand lingering on the cover. The fire has burned low, the shadows stretch long across the floor. She glances at the bottle resting on the mantel, glowing faintly in the lamplight. The story she has read feels less like fiction and more like confession, written in ink by someone who knew. Literature whispers what society refuses to shout, that laudanum has woven itself into every life, every story, every silence in Victorian London. Beyond the choking fog of London, far from the rattle of wheels and the clamour of markets, stand the country estates where the wealthy seek refuge. The air is clearer here, the fields rolling wide beneath pale skies, the gardens trimmed in neat rows of boxwood and rose. The great houses gleam with polish, their windows reflecting calm landscapes instead of soot-darkened streets. Families tell themselves they have come for health, for fresh air, for quiet, for a season away from the city's noise. Yet behind those polished doors the epidemic follows, carried in bottles packed neatly beside silks and lace. Within drawing rooms hung with velvet drapes, women recline on chaise lounges, their faces as pale as the marble hearths nearby. The household speaks softly of convalescence. They say Lady So-and-so has gone to the country to rest her nerves, to recover from the strain of city life. Visitors bring flowers, offer sympathy, comment on how restful the air must be, but the servants know better. They have seen the vials tucked into night tables, the spoons left sticky on trays, the trembling that begins when a bottle runs empty. The rich retreat to their estates not to leave the habit behind, but to endure it in silence. Doctors visit discreetly, their carriages rolling up gravel drives. They speak in low tones with husbands, prescribing longer stays and renewed quiet. The lady herself rarely leaves her chamber. Curtains are drawn to keep out the bright sun, the air within heavy with incense meant to mask the bitterness that lingers after each dose. Guests whisper about her absence, speculating about consumption, about fragile health. Respectability is preserved by keeping the truth veiled. To speak of opium would be unthinkable. Not all who retreat find calm. For some, the isolation sharpens the habit's hold. Far from the distraction of city theatres and gatherings, the days stretch long and empty. Bottles empty more quickly, the hours spent drifting in haze before the fire. Servants carry trays back and forth, their faces carefully blank, but they too see the decline. They exchange glances in the corridors, speaking only when certain no one can hear. "She is fading," they say softly. "The mistress will not last the season." Yet the countryside also becomes a place of concealment. In London, the whispers grow too loud, the mask too fragile. But in the country, neighbours live far apart, and silence is easier to keep. Families prefer the illusion that their daughters and wives are merely delicate, merely tired, merely in need of quiet. The truth stays behind the drawn curtains, where pale figures drift between bed and chair, their lives measured in spoonfuls of laudanum. You walk the estate's gardens one evening, the hedges damp with twilight dew. From an open window drifts the faintest sigh, the sound of someone sinking into stupor once more. The house glows warm against the dusk, but within it, shadows lengthen. The retreat is no cure. It is only distance, only delay, a way for the wealthy to suffer unseen, while the city continues its bustle without them. The rich retreat to their estates, but laudanum follows, as relentless in the countryside as in the crowded heart of London. The landscape may be gentler, the air cleaner, but behind velvet drapes and marble hearths, the same silent chains bind tightly still. The cradle rocks gently, its creak soft against the hush of the nursery. A child stirs, then settles again, unaware that the hand guiding the cradle grows weaker with each passing night. The mother sits nearby, her gown loose at the collar, her face pale in the lamplight. She once sang lullabies, her voice low and soothing, but now she hums only faintly, her strength spent. On the table beside her rests the bottle, its cork loosened, its dark contents dwindling. She reaches for it without thought, as natural now as breathing. At first, laudanum had seemed a blessing. The endless cries of infants, the exhaustion of sleepless nights, the ache of grief or illness all softened by the drops. Mothers told one another in whispers of its usefulness, of how quickly it calmed, how sweetly it brought rest. But with each spoonful, something more was taken. Energy faded, cheeks hollowed, eyes grew dim, and as the children grew, many were left with memories not of songs or laughter, but of mothers slumped in chairs, too weary to rise, too dazed to smile. The city hides these losses with careful words. Death records list consumption, weak constitution, or fever. Families explain the absence of mothers as misfortune, not consequence. Respectability demands silence, and so the truth is buried alongside the women themselves. But in cramped tenements and quiet parlors alike, the same story unfolds. Mothers lost, not to disease alone, but to the very cure prescribed to help them endure. Children carry the weight of it most. They grow too quickly, stepping into duties abandoned. Daughters learn to hush their younger siblings, to stir porridge, to fetch water from the pump. Sons, barely taller than the table, run errands to the apothecary, carrying coins in small hands, returning with bottles they do not yet understand. They watch their mothers fade, their voices softening to whispers, their embraces weaker each day, until at last they vanish entirely. The memory of laudanum clings, bitter and unshakable. In the charity wards, rows of women lie with infants at their sides, their bodies broken, their eyes glazed. Nurses shake their heads, whispering of frailty, but in their hearts they know the pattern too well. Laudanum has taken them long before the grave receives them. The orphans left behind fill workhouses and asylums, their lives marked from the first by medicine disguised as mercy. Among the wealthy, the story differs little. Grand houses lose mistresses just as narrow streets lose wives. Servants speak in hushed tones of ladies who rarely rise from bed, whose children are raised more by nurses than by their own hands. Behind curtains of velvet, mothers slip away as quietly as in the poorest slums, their absence explained with gentle lies, their bottles quietly removed before visitors arrive. The city does not speak of mothers lost, it cannot bear the shame, yet the loss is everywhere, in the empty chairs at hearths, in the children walking with lowered eyes, in the silence that replaces lullabies. London continues to move, its streets alive with noise, but within its homes countless voices have been stilled. Mothers gone, not by fate, but by the bitter drop that promised relief and delivered only absence. The pamphlets appear first thin sheets of paper, passed hand to hand on street corners and in church vestibules, their headlines printed in bold ink. They speak of ruin, of sin, of families broken by drink. The temperance crusade has gathered strength across Britain, its leaders marching into London with fiery sermons and banners declaring war against gin and ale. In meeting halls, men and women rise to pledge abstinence, lifting their hands solemnly before God and neighbour. The crusade thunders against the bottle that sloshes openly in taverns, the drink that staggers men into the gutters. Yet in its fervour, it misses the quieter epidemic unfolding behind lace curtains and locked doors. You sit among the crowd one evening as a preacher mounts the pulpit. His voice shakes the rafters as he condemns the gin palaces glittering on every corner, the working men who squander wages, the mothers left in rags. The audience murmurs approval, nodding, clapping. He speaks of salvation through temperance, of redemption through self-denial. Yet as his words rise higher, your thoughts drift to the vial waiting at home, to the bitter drops hidden in a handbag or resting by a bedside. No sermon speaks of that. For the Crusaders, drunkenness is a visible enemy, loud, public, disgraceful. It can be pointed to in the staggering step of a labourer, in the broken glass of a tavern brawl. Opium is different. It whispers in silence, its victims composed, their decline hidden behind respectability. To speak of it would mean accusing not only the poor but the refined, not only men in the street but ladies in their drawing rooms. And so the crusade narrows its vision, striking at gin while ignoring the tinctures that hollow the city's women. Yet the irony lingers. Many temperance societies serve tea at their meetings, cups steaming politely as members sign their pledges. Some of those cups are laced, quietly, with laudanum drops. Women sip in silence, praised for their virtue while the bitter taste coats their tongues. They sign oaths against alcohol while clutching the medicine that binds them more tightly still. Respectability shields them, even as dependence deepens. A few reformers notice. In scattered tracts warnings appear. The opium bottle is no safer than the gin glass. Doctors mutter uneasily that the crusade is half-blind. But such voices are faint, lost beneath the roar of sermons against spirits. The movement prefers its clear enemy, its easy symbol of vice. Laudanum remains untouched, hidden in plain sight, its victims invisible in the very halls where temperance is praised. You leave the meeting, the night damp with fog, the streets filled with voices still singing temperance hymns. The words echo through the city, carried on banners and shouts, yet their reach stops short of the epidemic that seeps through every household. The crusade saves some, perhaps, from gin's ruin, but it leaves others to fade quietly, unseen, with spoons lifted in silence rather than glasses raised in song. London swells with the sound of reform, but beneath it lies the hush of another truth, that the bitter drop continues to flow, untouched by sermons, unchallenged by pledges, binding its victims while the crusade marches past. The Chamber of Parliament hums with voices, the air heavy with the smell of ink, tobacco, and damp wool from coats hung in the corridors. Beneath the great clock, men rise to their feet, one after another, their words echoing through the vaulted hall. Outside, London's fog curls against the tall windows, dimming the weak daylight, but inside, the gas lamps burn steadily as the debate begins. The question is simple enough: should the sale of opium tinctures remain so free, so unguarded? Yet beneath that question lies the weight of an empire and the quiet suffering of thousands. A member rises, his voice stern. He speaks of the poor, of children stilled with syrups, of mothers wasting away behind closed doors. He has read reports from the charity wards. He has seen ledgers filled with the same names week after week. He calls it scandalous that bottles of laudanum can be bought as easily as bread, that patent medicines are hawked in marketplaces with no warning of their danger. His words are sharp, his outrage genuine. A murmur runs through the chamber. But another voice answers, smoother, practiced. This man reminds the assembly of trade, of revenue, of Britain's power balanced on the wealth opium provides. He speaks not of cradles hushed or mothers lost, but of treaties signed overseas, of markets secured, of merchants who depend on the steady flow of poppy across the seas. To regulate too strictly, he warns, would be to cut into commerce itself, to weaken the empire's hand. His words earn nods from those who value profit over pain. The debate sways back and forth. Some argue for modest measures, clearer labels, stricter weights, the end of gaudy advertisements that promise miracle cures. Others scoff, saying it is not the state's place to intrude upon the choices of respectable households. They remind their peers that physicians themselves prescribe laudanum freely, that it is considered medicine, not vice. To condemn it would be to cast judgment on the very profession they revere. From the gallery, you watch, your hands tightening on the railing. You think of the parlor whispers, the hollowed faces, the endless cycle that binds so many women in silence. Here, in the heart of power, those truths are reduced to numbers, to arguments of trade and principle. The voices of the afflicted do not reach these walls. Only the rhetoric of men fills the chamber, each one speaking loudly, yet none speaking for those who suffer in quiet. Hours pass, papers rustle, speeches are made, promises offered, yet when the debate closes, no sweeping reform is passed. At most, there will be talk of inquiries, of committees, of perhaps a law in the future. The matter is deferred, delayed, diluted. The men leave the chamber, their coats drawn close, their minds already turned to other matters. The lamps are extinguished, the hall grows dark once more. Outside, London waits in its fog. Apothecaries keep their shelves full, mothers keep their vials close, doctors keep their prescriptions flowing. Parliament has spoken, but only in half measures, only in cautious tones. The epidemic continues, silent and unseen, while the city carries on as though nothing has changed. The debate ends, but the drops remain. The decision is made quietly, often in solitude. A woman sits by her bedside, the vial before her, and whispers to herself that she will stop. Not all at once, for she has tried before, and the shadows that came were unbearable, but slowly, carefully, drop by drop. She resolves to wean herself, to take less each day, to loosen the chain that has bound her for so many years. It sounds simple when spoken aloud, yet the days ahead are harder than she dares imagine. The first reductions bring unease, The body feels restless, the skin prickles as though with unseen insects, the stomach knots. Sleep refuses her, or else comes only in fragments, dreams of rivers rising, of voices calling from the dark. She paces the floorboards at night, whispering prayers, clutching rosary beads until her fingers ache. By morning she is hollow-eyed, her limbs heavy, her will tested. And yet she forces herself to take fewer drops than the night before. The second week brings sharper trials. Pain returns in waves, the same pain that once led her to the vial. Her joints swell, her head pounds, her nerves quiver. Worse than the pain are the cravings, the thought that one full spoonful would banish it all, just for a while. The vial seems to glow brighter in the lamplight, its liquid clinging to the glass like temptation itself. She hides it in drawers, behind books, beneath linen, but still she knows exactly where it lies. Every hour becomes a battle of will against longing. Some women attempt the weaning under the watch of doctors, who measure out doses with clinical precision, praising their progress. Others fight alone, ashamed to confess their struggle even to family. They invent excuses for their trembling, their pale faces, their hollow stares. A touch of fever, they say. A restless night. Respectability must be preserved, even as their bodies scream in rebellion. Not all succeed. Many, after weeks of torment, return to the full measure, sighing in defeat as warmth spreads once more through their veins. They tell themselves it is safer, kinder, to live bound than to fight unbound, but a few endure. Slowly, painfully, the spoon grows lighter, the bottle empties more slowly, until at last the need softens. It never vanishes entirely, the memory of relief clings like a shadow, but the body learns again to stand without it. In the countryside, some retreats are built for this purpose. Large houses where women are sent to rest, their bottles taken, their days filled with long walks, plain meals, and cold baths. Some emerge stronger, others broken by the severity of the cure. The long weaning, as it comes to be called, is both hope and torment, salvation and trial. It is never quick, never easy. You think of the women you have known, friends, neighbors, even family who have whispered of their own weaning, some with pride, others with sorrow. Their faces remain with you, pale but resolute, haunted yet determined. For each of them, the path was the same, slow, stumbling, shadowed by relapse, yet marked by a fierce will to reclaim their lives. In London, the epidemic does not vanish. The bottles still gleam on apothecary shelves, but in hidden rooms, behind drawn curtains, women fight their quiet battles drop by drop. The long weaning is not victory in the grand sense, no parades, no sermons, no headlines. It is smaller, harder, more human, a woman setting down her spoon and whispering into the silence, not tonight, not this time. The fog drapes itself over London like a shroud, thick and damp, muffling every sound. Gas lamps glow faintly, their halos swallowed within a few feet, their light no more than blurred orbs suspended in the grey. Footsteps echo along the cobblestones, but never clearly. They vanish into the mist, leaving the walker uncertain whether someone follows or if it is only the city itself breathing in the haze. The Thames rolls unseen beneath the fog, its current steady, carrying with it secrets the city prefers not to name. Within this gloom, the memory of countless bottles lingers. The epidemic has not shouted its presence, it has whispered, quietly, steadily, until it is everywhere. Behind lace curtains, in tenement rooms, in country retreats, women have reached for their vials night after night. Their sighs of relief are gone now, carried away on the damp air, but their absence remains like a hollow space. The fog holds their echoes, the trembling hands, the hurried prayers, the silent dependence that bound them drop by drop. You walk along the embankment, the fog pressing against your skin, and you think of them. Mothers who rocked cradles until their strength failed, widows who sought solace from grief, governesses hiding bottles beneath folded linen, actresses leaning on drops before stepping into the gaslight. They are gone now, their names erased from ledgers, their diaries tucked away, their deaths explained with gentle lies. yet their shadows remain, stitched into the city's fabric as tightly as the soot in its stone. Even Parliament's debates and the crusades of reform have faded into silence. Laws may change, labels may bear warnings, yet the truth lingers that for decades, London lived under a quiet fog of laudanum. Society looked away, calling it medicine, calling it cure, until the faces of women were hollowed, until their children grew accustomed to silence instead of lullabies. The epidemic was never declared, never fought with banners or parades. It was endured, generation after generation, until its victims slipped into the mist, unnamed. Sometimes, on nights like this, you imagine their presence in the fog, a widow's sigh carried on the breeze, the faint clink of glass as though from a spoon against porcelain, a whisper of prayer, half-formed, before dissolving into the grey. They are not ghosts in the true sense, but echoes, remnants of a city that chose not to see, of lives swallowed not by fate but by the bitter drop in amber bottles. The lamps glow weaker still, the fog pressing thicker, and you feel the weight of silence settle around you. The epidemic has passed, yet its story lingers. It clings to the stones, to the river, to the very air, waiting to be remembered. And perhaps that is the final truth, that London's fog does not only hide the living from one another, it carries the memory of those lost, the countless voices that slipped quietly into silence, leaving only echoes behind. The city breathes, the river flows, the fog curls endlessly, and in its folds the forgotten remain. Echoes in the fog, bound forever to London's silent epidemic.